Welcome to the show. If you're watching this on
if you're watching the rerun, welcome to Full Moon RX Only Picture Show number 44 with Mr. James True and Tracy Twine.
It's full moon, equinox, all that good stuff.
Also, the first of 4.
All right, better promote.
Time to promote.
Oh, we should look at how many people are filing in here.
Yeah.
What an exciting night to be alive. 0, that can't be right.
Mine says 4.
Oh, okay. That's impossible. That reminds me of the old days.
While we watch the memes and promote the show on Twitter, Facebook, and other places.
Always got a tweet.
That's a great question, Jim. Maybe we should flip a coin.
Alright.
Heads is positive, tails is negative.
I don't have any coins.
I do.
So
Oh, no,
you have a
actually,
coin?
I intentionally left my coinage at home. That's ironic. Maybe we should flip $1.
I don't have $1, Sean. A bottle cap.
Alright, so the smooth side is heads.
Yeah.
Alright, I'll call it here.
Yeah.
Positive.
Yep.
Alright.
Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay. Yeah.
We just
do
flipped
that
a coin,
one, okay?
and I will be the contestant answering in the affirmative.
And I'm not.
I was talking about your sketch, so you know what I'm saying.
Without divulging the nature of something that might be like a sketch, Jem and I just replaced a coin with a bottle cap and flipped it, and I was chosen to be the contestant answering in the affirmative.
Good thinking.
Well, you should have been affirmative just for calling heads. RX Only Picture Show number 44. James True. There's a cobra in your couch.
His name is Carl. So Carl the Cobra. Carl the ball Cobra is in your couch.
That'll bring him in.
When we start making enough money to quit our jobs, I want to figure out how to promote this with
Hey, I
subtitles
see
in
your
Asian
face.
countries.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
Tracy.
Tracy, we are live if you did not notice.
Okay. Nice to meet you. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, you guys can see each other. That's cool.
Yeah, we can see each other, but I guess we don't know actually what's being shown on the feed, right?
Yeah, for now, what's being shown on the screen is just the memes.
Gotcha.
If you go to Sean's channel, SB's channel, you can see the live feed.
That's what I'm trying to find. I don't have a link yet, so I'm having to search for it.
It's hardly fair, is it? You should put that on your writer for the next interview. Write you with the link.
We should become professional.
Me too. I should put that in my contract.
I just sent a link to Twitter. And I added you guys on it.
Thank you.
The writer.
Yeah.
Like a Rider White?
DER, yeah.
Rider Weight?
Like where you say what color furniture you want in your waiting room.
Yeah.
Oh, only the blue M&Ms.
Yeah, Van Halen used to do that to test their crew. They would say that they want a bowl of brown M&Ms in the middle of the table, and if it wasn't there, they'd know that they couldn't trust the crew because they weren't actually reading the writer.
It's a good test.
To me, it's like having a parenting plan. Like you should never need a writer unless you're big time.
Yeah.
So to bring it up, I don't know. We're not supposed to.
What's up, chat?
Hi, everybody.
Shout out when you get in here. This is a new mix, yeah. What's up, the Beast? The Beast says, "Hey, brother."
On one.
It's one of my favorites, all time. All time favorite Adam Wars. What's up, also known as welcome to the show. Chuck Norris is here.
That's a great picture.
Chuck Norris cuts knives with butter. I love Chuck Norris jokes. Did you know that Chuck Norris can win a game of Connect 4 in only 3 moves? What's up, An American? It's now Real Plus Ultra Hours. Who up?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Real Plus Ultra Hours. Who up? tag
I'm
people
up.
on Facebook.
Facebook.
I tag a different variety based on the guest and my own personal feelings each week. I've yet to find a show where I thought I'd tag my grandpa, Jim Egan.
Yeah, you should have tagged your grandpa for Jim Egan. That was a.
I don't want him thinking about coming to watch the show.
I'm sure your grandpa would like it.
That's why, it's just like anything else. I don't want grandpa sitting in the audience while I'm doing a performance.
Yeah.
I
You gotta.
understand he wants to come, but he needs to just stay home.
Do you think he'd be offended by F-bombs?
Yes. Deeply.
Oh, grandpa.
He would be deeply offended, yes.
Welcome to the show if you're just joining us. We've got the memes rolling and we're going to start pretty soon. We're just kind of waiting for some people to pile in.
Take a look in the in the description and click the links to join the Discord if you want. Our guest's information is in there. If you've never heard of him, you can follow up there. We're still promoting the show a little bit and getting ready to join you and talk about this couch and this Cobra and
Oh yeah, the Discord's really fun. There's lots of great stuff going on in the Discord all the time. I can barely keep up. It's 15 people? 15 is the devil's number? Never heard that before. That's what also known as. Who's 16? Oh, I went down. Somebody's probably going to the Discord. Check that out. Phone now. Yeah, I guess sometimes the tarot does lie. That is up to interpretation, though. Yeah, he's down. So 44 is my number. So 19's the sun, huh? What's 44? This is episode 44. We didn't look that up in the numerology book yet.
Did you see that request?
Yeah. I saw that. That's pretty funny. Yeah. The animals love being on the show.
It'd be pretty awesome if we could borrow other people's exotic pets and have them present them to me like Johnny Cash.
We could have a name your pet contest and people could send pictures of their pets and we come up with names for them. No.
Oh, Tracy did. So now we both did.
Nice. The Discord knows.
This song's good advice, folks. Good advice in the lyrics to this one.
Oh, I love the video on this song.
The little boy smoking.
Yeah. The little
Fat Asian kid.
third world child smoking cigarettes.
Just atrocious.
It's pretty nasty, yeah. He's not wearing any pants either. He's just sitting there in his underwear smoking cigarettes. He's like 8 years old. Welcome, Harrison.
You better not sleep in the ocean. 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 Or else you'll drown.
Change these war songs around a little bit.
Maybe 2 or 3 more minutes and we'll push the button. Oh yeah, I got an idea. Let's go over here and give out some wrenches, or at least one. Oh, it's I've already got it poked out. Listen to me. Admiring.
Nice. It's gonna take me 10 seconds.
I said in the Discord that let Wednesday be our Sabbath, and Boomstick McQuaid pointed out that the Sabbath is the trough, and that Wednesday is the hump.
Oh, the sine wave.
Yeah. So I lied and said that I inverted it on purpose.
What's your sign?
This week we're doing all double inversion inversions. No discounts on double inversion inversions. Also known as says full as Libra moon tonight.
Full as.
I can't get stuck reading the chat here. Here are our participants. I wonder. Tracy, would you say something, please? Just to see if the camera jumps like it usually does.
Heidi ho ho, hi.
Yep, it does. Cool. And you're still in the shot, so.
How do you guys like Zoom?
Like it good. I haven't used it until tonight, and I considered just seeing if you wanted to share an account, but instead I was like, screw it, let's just buy it. Let's both own it. That way we've got redundancy. If either one of our Zooms is giving us trouble, we can use the other one, etc. So.
We do like redundancy around here.
Say that again.
What? Okay.
Okay, so. And what happens if we go to our old regular thing here? Oh, there we go, Jim.
What's up, Jacob Bacchus in the chat? Also, some tick me off.
Part of the fun of the current internet is to try to pronounce people's usernames. I guess it's always been that way, but now you read them out loud a lot more than we used to.
I wonder if I need a computer for the wrench.
I was gonna stick our folks in here.
Right on the glass for me.
Maybe one more song and we'll call it ready to go. I wonder what's next.
Should move that one up, yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
The Zoom seems a lot smoother.
Yeah,
I don't like that choppy thing that happens on Hangout sometimes, where it like forgets a block in the middle.
out of the Google ghetto and into the zooming middle class. Lower middle class.
Zooming on up.
That just put the Jeffersons theme song in my head.
I was singing that to myself just 2 days ago.
Right, yeah. I really loved the Jeffersons. I knew George Jefferson was a jerk, but I liked him anyway.
Wavy.
Oh my god. What tastes like corn?
In the basement? Yeah, it's weird.
Well, ours is filtered, so I would notice more of it.
I thought it tasted like chlorine too, but it didn't. It doesn't normally.
Yeah. You know what? If you structure it, that'll go away.
The chlorine will go away if you structure your water.
When I do it at the shop, because the shop sink is really chlorinated, you know, like even if you run it, it's pretty chlorinated. And so I'll take it and put it in the jar and spin it really fast like that, and then take the lid off and let it sit there, and I think that causes it to gas out faster.
I wonder if the city found some kind of contaminants and they decided to chlorinate
They
it.
did. They published it in a little tiny sidebar in the newspaper. They
Oh.
don't do like they should and publish a big
Yeah.
article. They're like, oh, by the way, if you have any illnesses, don't drink the water, and if you're going to boil it, like I was so
They
mad.
did, really.
Yeah.
When did that happen?
Almost 2 years ago, but I've seen updates since. Walla Walla
Huh.
water is not as good as it should be.
I thought there was something in the water here. I guess now there is.
All right, 23 people watching. We will go live at the end of this song and show you what we've got. Well, I guess you already know what we've got hiding in our couch.
Yeah, there's no further need to explain, really. You've made it so clear.
Oh, I think that was it. Well, okay. Okay, I lied. This one too.
Oh yeah, this one we gotta hear this one.
Oh, I see there's a problem here.
Oh shoot!
Man, that was close. Gee whiz.
What were we thinking?
Scary. There's stuff over here.
RX Only Picture Show is not a show unless we put the on the air
On the air.
banner up.
I love this thing.
Yeah, it really brings the room
Yeah, we
together.
need to get those 3 mics.
Yeah.
Hey. Yes. Or no, it's the same thing.
Not what it is. The snow's revealing all kinds of great things to eat outside.
Oh yeah, exactly.
The snow melt.
I better be ready this time. All right, all right. Man, these Adam Lore songs are hard to catch, aren't they? I'm just gonna find it and kill it.
Well, you can't kill it.
You think we should listen to this one?
You can just turn it down real,
That's
real
true.
slow.
That's true. We
Do a
can't
fade.
fade the volume. These songs that are all 8-bitty, these are for a soundtrack that Adam wrote to a game that doesn't exist. Adam Lore is my brother, and he wrote these songs. So I'm just gonna kill it. Let's push the button and go live. What are we afraid of?
I think we're
Ladies
already
and gentlemen,
live.
welcome to RX Only Picture Show number 44. I'm SB. This is Jim. Tracy's with us, and of course, our special guest this week, Mr. James True.
Hi.
Oh, did that work? Man, say it again, James.
Hello there.
Yes. Okay.
How's it?
Cool. There he is. The mic.
Nice.
The mic changes the video, so it's coming through. So
Let me just minimize that.
yeah, I'm gonna close this thing.
I mean, you could.
All right. So yeah, there's the title. I gotta know about this title. This is probably the first time I haven't taken like group input on the title or just brainstormed it. It was all James, and so James, tell us what does that mean? There's a Cobra in our couch here on Picture Show. What could that possibly mean?
Let me remember what I mean by that.
So it was like.
Oh, I can tell you that much, even if I forget what that meant. Here it is. Where's that quote?
Oh, it's from a quote?
Yeah, it's a quote. And you guys are just going to enjoy this quote until I find it.
Yeah, I wouldn't. And let us know in the chat. We're using Zoom instead of Hangouts this week. So in the chat, if you've got any audio or other issues, please hammer it in there so that we know and we're not latent on getting it corrected. But so if you got the quote, go ahead, James. I'm really curious.
If America dies, it will be the result of dual citizens sacrificing our country for greater reason. This is a plan that's been in place for 101 years, the Balfour Declaration. Our thought leaders do nothing to address it. They believe a Cobra is a mighty-fight thing to have living in conjunction.
Seems like something's wrong with your mic, bro. So I'm getting kind of a funny hiss noise, and it's not quite right. I don't know what happened because it's different. It seems like it's different than when we were doing the pre-show.
Yeah.
Can you hear that hissing sound too, Tracy, or not?
I do hear it. Here, try turning me out. Turn my mic off or something and see if that helps.
Let me see.
Here's some more of me talking, but I don't know if it's hissy or not.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean,
Still kind of hissy.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. And I'll mute you, Tracy, just to see what happens. Nah, there's still definitely a hiss there. I might unmute you. Well, that's all right, man. We can just roll with it. You might turn your line up just a little bit, even though there's a little feedback. We can still hear you talking.
Yeah, sorry about the hiss. I've got everything else off here, though. So.
It sounds like we're at the beach. Sort of a nice little ocean sound.
It's consistent. It's true. It's consistent. Whatever the feedback is, but it's all right, man. We don't have to worry about it.
Is it still there?
Yeah, it's still there. But
Yeah, it sounds like the ocean.
it does. It's all right. All right. If we could change your background to the beach, it would be perfect.
People pay for that kind of white noise.
They do. I've done it myself. But yeah, if you want to mess with it for a second, man, we can just kind of carry on here for a second. We're okay to do that too. If you want to try and troubleshoot it, James.
Honestly, I don't even know what to do. We had everything working right before, and then we lost the piano and the music, and now you're saying the mic is cut out. So something's going on my end here for sure. It's definitely something on my end, but I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it's all right. I'll tell you what, dude. It's not very loud. And it's a subtle sound. It's not super annoying. Let's just roll with it. Are you not hearing it?
No.
Then pretend we ever even mentioned it, man. Let's just move on. It's all right, because I don't want you to sweat it. I don't want it to come off as like a reason to feel like the vibe is off. The audience won't care. They're used to everything from dogs barking to people running up and down the stairs. We're super loose, not real tight. So.
Right on. Well, I just want to sound good. Well,
Hey, that did it. Whatever you did just went away. So there you go. Perfect.
All right.
I don't know what you pushed, but that was ideal. So I guess we didn't really do a great job of introducing you here. Some of our audience might not know who you are. I think once again, 2 weeks in a row, this is the first time maybe Tracy's met you. But I found James on Twitter just posting a lot of stuff that's in a really similar vein, looking at kind of the magical realm, Gnosticism, the confluence of religion, some QAnon, and kind of, I wouldn't quite call patriotic posts, but definitely freedom-based kind of, the idea that you're definitely behind individual liberty and all that kind of stuff. And I know, it's funny, Jim and I have both bought your books. He's bought them hard copy, and I've bought them on ebooks. Now, I haven't completed either one of them. I'm probably 1/3 of the way into the Spell of Six Dragons, and I saw a lot of the posts from your new book. Tell us the title of that brand new book, would you please, James?
Yeah, it's called Blueprints of Mind Control.
Yeah, I know
it's been about 3 weeks now.
But it's only been out for 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the information to grab James's Twitter and or his website or his Amazon is all right in the description as usual, folks. I saw a lot of the posts that you were bringing out leading up to that book, and I know that you said that was a big inspiration for the Mind Control book. And I would say it definitely overlaps with work that Tracy's done. Tracy wrote a book, I don't know when it was published, but it was a while ago, called Mind-Controlled Sex Slaves in the CIA. Is that correct, Tracy?
Yeah, that came out in 2005.
Okay.
Or 2006, something like that.
And, and you interviewed the author of Transformations, or is that? I can't remember the lady's name, but she's really famous for the MKUltra mind control. Right, that was part of that book, right?
Yeah, Kathy O'Brien and several of the main characters. Anyway, what was in James True's book? I'd like to know more about that.
Yeah, go ahead, James. Give us a little bit of an overview on your most recent work here.
It's a technical manual on setting up a microphone for live streams. I gave it a different title to fool people. No. So Blueprints of Mind Control is a direct focus on what's actually in your individual life. Most of us, when we hear mind control, we think MKUltra, which is a huge topic in and of itself. But in a way, when you think MKUltra, a lot of people think that, therefore, outside of me is this little pocket of the world that has mind control inside of it. And that pocket is called MKUltra. And boy, I'm sure I'm glad that I'm not in that world. And so my book is carpet bombing that idea with napalm and telling it mind control is everywhere and you are drenching in it, and so am I as the author. And it points out a simple blueprint that you can kind of use as a litmus test, and it applies that litmus test over 47 chapters. So there's a little bit about space, there's a little bit about education, there's a little bit about religion, there's a little bit about politics. But the underlying theme is that you need to be questioning what's around you. And the less you question, the less awareness you are, the less awareness you have. The more you trust, the more you are under the control, under my control. And it just explores that personal notion of it. And it's trying to constantly push the reader to say, no, I'm serious. You're under my control. And then they're like, okay, well, maybe I'm in that way. Then they turn to chapter 4 and I'm like, okay, but now you're also in my control under this. So it's a constant egging on of the reader. But because I'm doing that to you, I've really tried to make it as sexy as possible. I've really
sexy mind control
picture, that it makes it comfortable to do that. And so that's probably the long, quick version of the book.
Would you say you're using mind control to sell the idea of mind control?
Shh. Can you back up the tape and cut that? That was in my writer. So you're not supposed to disclose the mind control?
That was in my writer. Tracy, if this writer thing gets out of hand, I blame you for manifesting it into the show. But yeah,
you're using persuasion at least.
Yeah, it definitely tries to tie in. Really, it's such a broad book. Carbon footprints is a perfect example of that. Al Gore painted this picture in your mind of a world that is this pristine version of unhuman, and it's occupied by all the normal natural things that are supposed to be here in the universe. And these normal natural things are doing great. And then you come along, man, and your sticky evil is dripping dirty black footprints all over the shores of this white, beautiful beach. And it exposes that as mind control. It reminds people that man is the living soil and that we are walking mushrooms with kneecaps, and we are integrated in this system, and we don't breathe poison. We're not bad. In fact, trash. Okay, first of all, a bear is like so freaking messy. If you've ever seen a bear like turn over trash, it's like that dude has no manners at all. So this whole notion that everything's clean except for man, like we're the ones that aren't picking up after ourselves. It's just this really bored in the face since we're kids. It's just constantly telling us, you're dirty, you're bad, you're bad. And meanwhile, all these other animals utilize some form of waste. They're creating a byproduct. That byproduct is actually turning into something else. But no, we're not allowed to do that. And our kids are walking around with trash bags, and they're stuffing it with trash for a year, and they're getting virtue. Like, people are licking the virtue off them doing that, and it's terrible what's happening.
No, it
to
is.
us.
I agree. But you just made me remember something. I got to share with you guys. You saying bears are dirty. When I used to take care of a man in a wheelchair, and we traveled. We tried to go to Alaska, and we failed. So in our retreat, we went to Yellowstone National Park instead. And there's the display museum at some of the locations, kind of out in the woods, that show different things. But the thing that popped into my head is that they used to bring all of the trash and just pile it in like on a stage, essentially, and put all of the people in bleachers and just feed the bears garbage as like a entertainment. And they talked about how different it is now and how careful and safe. And I was just thinking, what another example, a perfect example, that it used to be that the most entertaining thing you could do was to feed your garbage to the bears and watch. And now, if you even leave your garbage unlocked, you're bad. You're horribly punished, and maybe we're gonna have to even kick you out of this place, right? So it's just another. I've noticed, for me, I've always noticed that that's a big part of the mind control theme that you see rolling across all the different genres of media and stuff. That they change. They force you to change horses in midstream and reverse your aggression or your energy or your shame or whatever it is. Like, it used to be this was okay, and now it's not, and you better hurry up and realize it,
So if a bear can shit in the woods, why can't we?
That's a great question. I think it stems right back to what James said. Right, James?
I assumed he would supply the answer.
Yeah, we tear each other up, and we do that. We do that so the ranch will run, and that's part of the mind control, is just realizing that and learning to like yourself again, like learning how to unpeel that and redefine yourself. The trick is that as you unwrap the mind control, what you're finding is that there's a lot of deceit out there, and the more deceit you peel away, the harder your life is to live outside of your own awareness. You might see yourself as an accountant, or as a soccer player, or as something that's outside of yourself, where you come outside yourself and you turn around and you look at yourself and you say, that's who I am. And as you uncover the mind control, you're kind of forced. It's almost like you've jumped into a super cold lake of water that's like super freezing, and you kind of hyperventilate, like your core, everything seizes up, and you kind of end up jumping into the inside of yourself again. And it's kind of painful and shocking, but it's like the greatest thing we could ever do. And if everybody would do that, or if it would happen to everybody, a lot of things would change overnight. And that's kind of what the book tries to do. It tries to do that emotionally. It tries to walk someone through that.
Are there times in the past that you can think of when that's happened?
Yeah, for me, definitely. That's how I got through whatever it is. Like, I was thrown out of a tribe, and then that hurt. And then, but I was defining myself by what that tribe thought of me. And so that hurt more. And then as I started to redefine myself, I realized, well, the reason why I haven't been myself is because I was never allowed to say out loud, I think this everybody's dirty thing is bullshit. Like, I would say things like that, but it was never accepted. And because I was in the wrong tribe, like because I was in a tribe that was like, we like shame, we shame you, you shame me, we get virtue. And it was like that kind of setup. And as you uncover the mind control, you're losing a lot, you're shedding, you become allergic to things that you really don't want to be allergic to. And that's part of the process. But also that's how the mind control works. That's actually why it works. It's because it hurts to wake up. that's how the ranch fencing works. That's what barbed wire feels like. The higher you go over the fence, the more you start to tear into your skin.
Mm-hmm.
So you're using,
It's a brilliant idea. It's a perfect way to control someone is to do that.
So to be clear, you're using the analogy of being on a range. I just want to make sure that the audience is catching that. You're saying the range mentality, or the analogy of a barbed wire fence.
Yeah, I'm an analogy jumper. I meant like a ranch. Like
Oh,
if you could
ranch.
think, if you could think of us as like a product, a meat crop, a crop made out of meat. And the purpose of the government is to solicit 20% of our meat. They are sharecropping our own bodies to us. That's why they charge us tax for our labor. They've it's no different than grabbing an animal and taking 40% off that animal and calling that fair. So we're under the impression that we have a federal government that's here to help us, but what we actually have is a federal corporation, one of three in the world, that is just here to render our labor from us, and that's why our taxes go up. That's why we're given like these little promises of, oh, we're going to get a 5% tax cut. Like that's why it's going to stay that way. That's why it will always be that way on the federal level. So, but that's part of the mind control, because we have a sigil of the American flag that tells us this is the land of the free. And so because of us thinking that we're in the land of the free, it becomes cognitively dissonant to even try and push against that, to walk into the Mall of America and say, hey, I don't think we're living in the land of the free. You're instantly just going to get a huge pushback that's like, well, what are you talking about? Look at there's the flag right there. Well, of course you have it. So again, this is just another way of that mind control that I try and address, in the book and in my column and on Twitter, right now. This is all I talk about. So.
I saw on Twitter somebody actually said that there's no such thing as MKUltra. It's a hoax.
Huh.
Actually, I think what they meant to say actually just Project Monarch, because they were responding to conspiracy theories or people talking about them in response to some pop culture story. But it's because everybody at this point in history, so many people are talking about that, about the MKUltra influence on popular people, on actors and musicians, that people who've never even heard of that stuff before just put it all in the realm of unbelievable conspiracy theories and are apparently ignorant of the fact that MKUltra is something that's been declassified and acknowledged broadly. So I just thought it was kind of funny.
I think I probably used to believe that, like a long time ago. What I mean, like when I first started hearing that word, it wasn't that I thought it was made up. It was so far away. It felt like a really distant planet to me. And it was in Germany, so it was across the ocean. I'm just telling you, how the archetype works. It was in Germany, so it was across the ocean, and it was deep in the past. It was something that happened a long time ago, and so to me, that's the part of the psyop. Like, if I was the cabal, that's what I would be doing. It would be great to declassify it, because it looks old, even though it's not. It's all this is documented. It has that feel to it. And so again, it puts us in that juxtaposition where we automatically think, well, we're not that. So it makes us feel even less into the idea that we're under that too.
Yeah. Don't you think like outlawing slavery or a particular type of slavery does the same thing? Like make you think that, oh, there's no such thing as slaves anymore?
Well, exactly. That's it's a perfect example.
Yeah, I'd say we see this over and over again on the macro, like you guys are talking about. Like to use the slavery thing as an example is great for like the big picture. Like slavery ended in North America, right? Like, well, that's not really how it happened, and that doesn't mean there's no such thing as slaves. But on the micro level, I would say we see it too, that like whatever tragic or controversial thing is coming across in the press, usually it's a limited hangout. If they have to dump any true information at all, it's definitely not the full detailed backstory. You can't just go open up the books and be like, oh, I want to get the full picture on this. It's some little snippet, soundbite, some video, commentary from more than one person on the video, interviewing someone who was allegedly on the scene, and then after that, you're supposed to forget that it's, we acknowledged and detailed this to you, and now it's time to move on from there. Then they lead you somewhere else too. I would say that's an example of the same thing,
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah,
I think the entire education system is compulsory. And the only reason why we have an education system is to install mind control, to install the border fencing or the horse blinders over our eyes that show us, most importantly, what's taboo. I think mind control is all about taboo, and to push against America is the land of the free is a taboo. To push against diversity as our strength is a taboo. That's all it takes. That works so much more effectively. And look at slavery. If you say the word slavery, you picture chains on someone. You picture someone who's in chains, and that gives you the impression that, well, that's what slavery is. Slavery is when someone puts a chain on your leg, and then you're attached to another person. So I'm not that. And then you're like, oh, let me pay some more tax today. Let me give some more of this or more of that. So, or let me go fight your war for you because of the exact same mind control, which tells you, hey, if you agree to go fight this war, if you delegate your morality, if you give us the ownership of your morality, we will let you sharecrop it, and you can enlist in our system and accept our chain of command, and none of this is considered slavery. It even tells you it's a chain of command, and it's not slavery because they're paying you, which is like coming up to a prisoner and saying, "You're not a prisoner. We feed you." It's
sometimes they actually pay them too, right? Like lots of prisoners get paid.
Yeah.
What you said about school, I like this. I like that topic because a lot of people don't know the history of our education system. But in the state of Washington here, on and off over the last 10 years or whatever, on TV, you've seen budget crisis coming. And so if you watch the little state news channel about, kind of like local C-SPAN, they'll be debating and arguing about it, and they show the pie graph, and like 65% of the budget or something stupid like that is K through 12. So I would always say to people, just eliminate K through 12. Let people teach their own kids. Let the big churches and other groups that want to sprout up to take over this area free all that money up, and no one would take me seriously for a second. They just laugh out loud. And I'm like, I'm not kidding. Eliminate the K through 12 school system and free up the money, and let's start over. And people they don't hear it. And if you say you're serious, then like you said, there's the taboo. They're like, you've got to be kidding me. What would we do? Oh my gosh, Sean, what would we do if we were responsible for our children 8 hours a day? What a nightmare.
Yeah.
I usually don't tell people, I don't use the words mind control, but I do tell people I think that we're all under an endless variety of spells. And that it's, that it's not, I'm not using that as an allegory at all, that it really is tied into the idea of spelling and words, and that something a year ago that you would have never believed, you might find that you've shook off the spell, or that something's shocked you out of it, like you were talking about, like jumping in the lake. And everybody in this kind of realm that we're in, with the conspiracy and or deep research into esoteric stuff, most people will give you some example of like, oh, it was 9/11, or it was JFK, or it was flat earth. Everyone has this example of something that at least started this process of breaking spells.
Yeah, well, our life is one like, you're in a trance no matter what, like all the time. Every single thing that you do is a trance, whether that be with yourself or in your community. And so different layers of trance are installed through the compulsory system. And one of those is, it's a small world after all, is the trance. Like if you want to talk about flat Earth, like they're convincing us that this is all land that's here. This is all that you know. It is a small world. I don't know. I no longer have any idea the shape of our world, or even, I only know it's bigger. That's all I know, is that I know for sure it's bigger. I know absolutely for sure that the place we call Earth is bigger than we've been told it is. But the compulsory mind control has been reinforced every single year. That trance is reinforced. It's reinforced every single time you go into a movie theater and you watch the universal pictures. Every single time and that's a trance, because you're sitting down in a dark room in a church to lean back and ingest prana from silver. You're entering into trance in that too. So it's a constant reinforcement of layers and layers of veneer it's just constantly coating you with it. And so again, when you think to break out of that, it's a painful, lonely process. And most people don't want to do that. They're not willing to invest. There's a lot of pain involved in that, like nerve pain. Your neurons are going to have to completely rewire, and every time they're going to try and go back to the lazy way, and it's going to hurt. It's the long process. So, but it's going to hurt in the way of like, if you're getting used to riding a motorcycle, but you've been in a car your whole life, you've had that climate control situation, and then the first time you get in the motorcycle and it's cold outside, you're now like, what did I do? Like, well, it's exactly that kind of thing. So it hurts, but also it's liberating too. Those two kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, that happened to me. What you're describing happened to me. The only time I ever went scuba diving was on the Great Barrier Reef, and it was just a quick, like 15-20 minute dive. You pay your money to the tour guide, and there was a really shy Japanese girl who was it was two people and an instructor. And so this, they have you test your equipment and demonstrate that you understand what to do. And so we did that, and this girl was completely dying of a panic attack, like before we ever even went under the water. And he's like 5 or 6 times asking her, like, do you want to get out of this? You don't have to do this, like he's almost telling her he's not going to take her. And she gets her shit together, and she's like, no, I really want to go. So the whole time we're underneath there, he pretty much trusted me to be on my own. And that was fine. So I was all by myself, for the first time ever, with the first time using a rebreather, looking around at the Great Barrier Reef, taking pictures with my little underwater camera. And I realized that they had gotten pretty far away from me. And so I started to swim over to him, and I'm not really in great shape. And so like, I'm kind of far away. I'm a little bit spooked, like, okay, I'm kind of far away. I need to get back closer to the instructor. And, in the process of paddling and swimming over there, I got winded, and it gave me like this horrible panic of being in a new environment and not knowing how to react to it. And all I had done was become short of breath underneath the ocean. But my hand wants to reach for that rebreather. But the world that I want to be there isn't there if I take the rebreather out. Then I'm going to die. So then I panic a little bit more, and I just slowed my kicking speed down, slowed my arms down, and realized I can see who I'm after. I don't have to hurry. I caught my breath and acclimatized, and it was great. But for just a minute, I had that. I think that's a good analogy to what you're talking about, like this feeling of, oh man, I rode here on my motorcycle in the day, but now the sun has set and it's gotten cold, and I don't have a leather jacket, so I have to ride home in the cold. And you feel like, oh crap, I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what this means, right?
Yeah. Same with a campfire. Same with getting used to sleeping outside. Getting used to traveling versus staying in the same place. All these things are different layers of mind control that make it easier to become comfortable with the schedule that you would call typical, in which you are delegating your autonomy every day of the year, with the exception of the weekends and 2 weeks vacation. That, with the exception of that time, you are a sharecropper of your own will, of your own everything. And to make that possible, they need to make it comfortable and known. They need to, that's how you induce the state. And more importantly, the longer that state is maintained, the more your receptors are shaped to expect that. And so that's why, you'll sleep better if you do exercise or just go through any kind of sensory overload. You're going to sleep better because your receptors are working. Your brain burns more calories than any other organ, any of them all. It's no contest how much our brain burns calories. And so that's going to, your body's constantly looking at, I must be efficient, and me wake up, me no burn calories. It's like that kind of decision. And unless you're listening to your body, you don't know to override that and say, yeah, I hear you, buddy, but we're gonna wake up here. And we're gonna stay awake as much as it gets easier, but it is very hard at the very beginning. And that's why they program us with trauma, and that's how we be free. Trauma is going to free us too. Just like trauma used to program us, it can also be used to free us.
I think one of the most amazing examples of how we've been mind controlled in the way that you're just describing, to be comfortable doing certain things and receiving certain brain stimuli in response to it, is the way that we've been programmed with social media here just in the last 10 years or so, where, I mean, this has even come out with, testimony on Capitol Hill and stuff. Facebook, for instance, came up with a, scientific way of stimulating dopamine with people using it so that they would want to stay on Facebook, as they said, as much of their life as possible. That you would be logging into Facebook multiple times per day and eventually getting most of your satisfaction in life from it is what they had envisioned. And I think with a lot of their users, they achieved that. And with nothing else, if nothing else, they did achieve getting so many people, including the media itself, the rest of the internet, addicted to utilizing Facebook as a way of accessing their audience. And with some companies and some individuals, it seemed, at least in the short term, a useful way of marketing and maybe even cost efficient in the short term. But in the long term, they were giving Facebook control of their connection with their own audience. And so here we are now. We've all got kind of a Facebook hangover, I think. And I know that they're losing, engagement. They're losing members a lot. But it's still going to take a long time for 1 billion plus people to log off of Facebook. It won't happen anytime soon. But the thing is that I think we can all look at what's happened here and say, wow, I got used to getting easy likes. And the people at Facebook even said they were trying to give the same feeling, and they achieved giving the same feeling to people as if they were receiving actual money when they were getting likes. And I think that actually did replace those receptors in people's brains, so that where normally they would be motivated when they're doing their media business every day to try to get as much money as possible, to try to get as large of an audience as possible so that you could get as much money as possible. And yes, of course, fame and whatever ego achievement might also be driving you. But when you successfully reprogram the brain so that it feels that satisfaction from getting likes, whether they get any money or achieve anything else or not, then it's displacing the effort that people are making and turning all those people into slaves for Facebook. Well, so, people can look now and realize that if they've gotten used to using Facebook as a marketing tool, and now they're realizing especially if you're a little bit different in the media than the mainstream, you're realizing that you really can't rely on Facebook anymore. And it becomes difficult to reprogram yourself and go back to what you would have been doing before you were using Facebook for marketing. And as we mentioned on the last show, some companies, some magazines and newspapers were even publishing most of their articles just directly through Facebook, not even using their own website, not even bringing people to their website. And today in the news, in response to what happened in New Zealand recently, the terrorist attacks, they're talking about ISPs just, banning all sorts of websites, URLs. So it's like, as soon as people started realizing they need to get back to using regular websites instead of going through Facebook, automatically there's a tragedy and some kind of interference being put in place to prevent people from doing that, even as they're struggling to reprogram their minds and remember how to do that, the stuff they used to do a few years ago. So, yeah, just an example.
Well, also, it really shows it was ridiculous how every single company was saying, find us on Facebook. Like, even before Facebook had taken off, you'd see buses go by, you'd see Good Morning America, you'd see all the five, whatever you want to call it, the giant Leviathan was pushing that. And that's the only thing that mattered to them. It didn't even matter that their product sold.
Right.
What mattered is that people were going to Facebook to either complain about it or to praise it. That's all that mattered. And if I was more astute when that was happening, I remember seeing that happen with Facebook because I was a developer for software and things like that, and just trying to get my own website off the ground. And I remember seeing that, but not being aware of what the real world is, and just going, gosh, these guys are just freaking brilliant. Like, they must have gone in and said, hey, General Mills, I'm going to give you a blowjob, like every morning. Like, I had to do so much to make General Mills decide I'm going to put Facebook on every single box of cereal, on every single thing. That real estate is so crucial, and people don't, like people outside of marketing don't realize how freaking crucial that real estate is. And to watch a company say, oh, find us on this other company that exists, it because I was naive, it never registered to me that what was going on. But I also think this is a gnosis to show that our legal system is completely bunk, because someone should be able to sue for this. Yeah. Someone should be able to bring up a colossal lawsuit and say, and I don't even know the legal terms, so please forgive me here, but there's something about not collusion, but there's a monopoly going on here. There's something, the public was misled on purpose, and someone should be liable for that. And you could come in and explain exactly what you did, because I read similar things about that, like, look, this is a dopamine reprogramming situation. And if we had a real legal system, like if we had real laws, someone could be held accountable for that, and it could be busted up. We could prove that as, hey, this proves that only 5 corporations run the world, therefore we don't do that, so we're breaking this up. But the exact opposite is happening.
I think there are some kind of laws about this, because I remember when I was going to school for broadcasting and stuff, there was this class I had to take. It was about advertising, and they covered subliminal advertising, and they talked about how, yeah, it still goes on, but they try not to make it so obvious, and you shouldn't do it because really there's a law against it, and it's considered bad, and you can be held liable for certain things, I guess, because it's kind of a hypnotic trigger. I think that there's actually laws covering hypnotizing someone against their will and the consequences of that. I don't know what they're called, though, and I think it's a fairly difficult case to prove, which is why we don't hear much about it. But there must be some kind of laws about it, because I do remember learning about it and how, companies were trying to be careful not to step over the line, whatever that is. So, but if that line exists, then having DARPA come up with, military grade mind control science to do exactly what we were just describing, of rewiring everyone's brain to give control of their own company's marketing and, everything else that Facebook has been doing all that stuff against our will to us, absolutely is grounds for a lawsuit, I think, against Facebook, against any government agencies that were involved in that. So absolutely, it's the sort of thing that they would be liable for at least millions and billions of dollars worth of lost revenue for all those companies that now are dependent upon this system that turns out to have been a DARPA mind control experiment.
Right.
That I absolutely think people should class action sue. I don't know. You can sue government agencies and you can sue corporations. It might have to be two separate lawsuits, but it should be done because it'd be beautiful if you can bankrupt an institution by suing them to the point where they can't pay and they have to go away. That's one of the best ways of solving a problem, I think. And I've heard that sometimes particularly corrupt police departments can be dismantled by doing this, by just continuing to hit them with lawsuits until their insurance no longer will cover them for that kind of stuff anymore. And I think that we should try that with these corporations.
We're seeing the same kind of thing maybe starting to happen, cross my fingers, hopefully starting to happen with Monsanto. I saw it in the press just this week that the second huge lawsuit just came through, and they're obviously that's an easier case to win when you've got hundreds of thousands of people showing signs of illness and or having died or gotten super sick and died. But I really don't see it as two different things. The science is there to verify what flat screen televisions and the Facebook app or your smartphone do to your brain. It's a little bit less physiological in its showing the symptomology, but it's still, in a sense, I wouldn't say it's making us sick the same as glyphosate. I said that wrong. But it's definitely having side effects. It's like we're all on drugs. It has the same effect literally as being on drugs. Because that's what you guys were describing to me. It made me think, they kind of forced everybody to kick and go back to what they used to do. But that's just part of the experiment too, in my opinion. They know they're doing that. They want to see what we do next.
Well, I don't think that we actually have a legal system like that. I do think that the police department thing happens. I see that, but also I think that those are small players. Let's go back to Exxon Valdez a long time ago. That was a big wreck, and if we had a real justice system, if it really worked that way, Exxon should have been out of business. Like that should have ended their entire company. But because we don't have a justice system that works that way, there's no way that's going to happen. And I'm not just saying that it's just Exxon Valdez, because the same thing happened with BP. I'm also want to throw out that it just happened with Actos. There's a drug company called Actos, and they made this drug, and they said it didn't do what it did, but then it turned out that they did know that it was going to be bad, but they didn't tell you. And then they lost a lawsuit. It was the largest lawsuit ever for a civil judgment. It was $19 billion. And they won. The jury awarded them that, and the judge turned it into $500 million. She just decided, I'm going to reduce the sentence. And that was a Bush appointed judge. And that money, that $19.3 billion settlement that they won, Actos made $22 billion, overall. So even that judgment wasn't enough to fully hurt them, to destroy them. And that was just one of many drugs that they had in their catalog. And so you see suits like this that happen all the time. It's not just a few times, it's every time The same, if you're connected that big, it doesn't matter where you are, you're never going to be held accountable. I think that might be happening with Epstein right now,
Yes.
with the way that trial is unfolding too. This is part of mind control, is that we're under the impression that we have a justice system. We don't. We have a mediation service that's rendered in a temple of Baal where people wear black robes. Like it's not a business. It's justice is almost like a cult. It's almost like a secret society. And when you go into court, you are turning your living body into a contract, and then you're trying to win that contract. You're trying to settle that contract. It's everything about it is satanic. And I think it's mind control for us to think, well, we could just get a lawsuit. If we just had the right lawyer, if we just came up with the right case, we would get them. I don't think that's ever going to happen because of the way our government is structured. If we were to decentralize, then it would happen. Imagine Hillary Clinton being pursued by 50 state prosecutors, not one central federal prosecutor. And I want people to say, well, yeah, but then that'll make everybody scared to run for president. I'm like, that's great.
Yeah.
I am all for everyone being scared to run for president. I am all for whoever wants to be in charge is going to be just living on a bed of nails. And it's going to be the most uncomfortable thing they've ever done. I am so okay. I still think we're going to have some people that want that job. And I want them to go in every day with, holy shit, I have to dismantle this thing as quickly as possible because I'm liable for everything that happens here, which means I'm going to return the militia back to each state. We're going to muster like we used to back in the old days, by God, where we say, hey, we want to go kill some guys over here. Tennessee, what can you do? And Tennessee answers back, we believe in that. We're going to send you 20,000 troops from the volunteer state of Tennessee. And Kentucky's going to look at them and say, hey, screw that. That's the worst idea I've ever heard. We're going to send you nothing. And each state decides, here's what we're going to do, here's how we're going to fight. And every single person who's coming to fight has volition. They have will. And their psychic prana is completely charged. And if they're going to kill somebody, by God, they're going to kill somebody because they believe that that's what needs to be done. Make the centralization have to overtake as many states, or what I like even better is bioregions, as possible. If we could have just rough count like 180 bioregions and sort of make states kind of like an old school thing that we did, I think we could really establish a real government, a real confederacy that would completely end the satanic system. I'm going all over the place, sorry.
No,
But
that's all good,
I
man.
think that would really work. It would turn our law upside down. It would turn civil action upside down in a really positive way.
Do you think that part of what's going on here, why this isn't happening? Sorry.
You're fine.
Okay. Sorry.
No, you're all
I
good.
couldn't tell. I'm having a hard time telling, how much of me talking makes the camera go back to me or not. This is our first time using Zoom to do this, guys.
Yeah.
So.
It
But I was gonna say, like, do you think maybe this stuff doesn't happen more because we're all under the illusion yet again that we have something to lose and that there's a certain amount of safety in the current system? Because I think that, we're all being stimulated with hormones, basically, our brains are being stimulated to produce hormones that make us feel that way, make us feel like we're relatively safe, even if we maybe think that it sucks, that there's something worse that could happen. Like, say, for instance, everyone's afraid of, losing the money in their 401k or losing the value of their house or losing, whatever, Medicare,
Right, their
and
health
Social
insurance.
Security, all that stuff. So that if anything rocks the boat, and messes up that little nest egg that they have, then they're going to lose. And so, for instance, I think that that's why a lot of older people aren't in any kind of revolutionary spirit, is because they're just concerned about that. But I think it's an illusion. Like, I think, half these people that are retired right now could very easily, end up on the streets before they ever die, you know, and all sorts of really bad things could happen, even if they never, you know, wake up and resist the system. But they feel like if they, you know, everyone just goes along to get along, and especially so much of it is riding on housing prices right now. At least here where we are in the United States, it's like that's what provides people their security. But it seems like you know, the government has to have its hands in so many pies in order to keep that going. Just that one thing. There's so many other examples, but I guess what I'm saying is, yeah, people have an illusion of security. I think it's an illusion. I don't think that we have that much to lose, really. But that's my assessment. I don't know if I'm wrong, but I feel like I'm willing to take the risk, maybe because I feel that I don't have much to lose, but I don't know how I'd feel if I had, you know, $100,000 in a nest egg somewhere. Maybe I would be less willing to take risks. But to me, it seems like everyone's walking around in a trance, as if everything's okay, and we're actually walking over a cliff. And they're just afraid that if they rebel against the marching orders, that, you know, they're going to look down and find out that they have no ground beneath them. But the truth is that they already don't have any ground beneath them, don't you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's spot on. And that's part of that trance, is that if you're going across the country and you're inside the car the whole time and the windows are up and you've got the air conditioning on or whatever, you are entrained to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and you were cool with that, man. You were okay with that, and you're okay with that for a while. And as that stays, you become entrained to that, where that is your new normal, which means as soon as you see a change, you're like, what happened to my normal? And there's automatically a reaction. And then the worst thing, I think, to me, this is the strongest form. This is what makes it the hardest to wake up, is that every day you're selling yourself. Every single day, you're like, that's why I keep using the word sharecropping. People don't realize what's actually happening. You're sharecropping your essence, your vitality. Like as an example, this is sort of a tangent, but I think this illustrates my point. Someone on Twitter was saying, hey, what should I do? A friend needs help, but I just don't have money. I can't afford to help them. And of course, someone really wise came in and said, well, offer your time. And in my head, I was thinking, man, I would have said it different. I would have told them, hey, offer your time, but then right after you offer your time, come back and ask yourself, why the hell do you think money is more important than time? Like, what made you wake up and think, well, I should offer money first? It's your time that's more valuable. But we don't see that, because here's why it's black magic, people. Here's why it's black magic. We don't see how we devalue time because we put a value on time. Because we're told you make $20 an hour and now you're making $25 an hour, you think your time is valuable. But your time used to be priceless. Your time used to be the most precious thing there was, until someone told you your time was worth $25 an hour. And every day you get up and do that, it's going to be harder to look back at all that time and say, oh my God, what did I do? Like, look what I did. Look at all that time I gave away into this system. And now people are telling me maybe the system isn't real. But no, because they're going to finally see that there was a sacrifice, that they were sacrificing themselves instead of investing. Think about what really is the difference between investing and sacrificing. And that's why I think to me, that's the most painful part of getting someone to wake up, is that they realize just how valuable their time was. And they're not willing to look at that investment and go, I'm not walking away from this, man. I've committed too much to this. It's got to have some kind of value. This is going to have to pay out eventually. And that's why they stay. That's why they stay.
Yeah, I relate to that so much, man. I've even written a song about it, about just the regret of lost time, of investing time in things and not getting, I'd say music is a pretty good example in my life. I've done a lot of playing music and having a great time, and we made a lot of recordings in different variety of bands, and never did we succeed in publishing and or even completing an album, and so I've stewed over it, and I feel like probably what most people don't realize is that the most dangerous thing psychologically to a person, in my opinion, is the unknown. Most people, if you say, "Oh, what's the what," they think of safety, or they think of like shelter and food and water, like what can you not live without? But that's not really true. You can live without those things pretty easy. It's the idea of not knowing what's going to happen next that people cannot. Anyone that's seen people in poor people are a great example. You take them out of poverty too fast and put them in something just comfortable, like a regular room in a house, and they can't hang. They feel completely ill at ease and at odds with everything because they're used to this different schema. The foundational outline of life is so much different that they'll go back and find the poverty. It happened to me one time that I went to a really ratty house with a friend of mine, and where I grew up in Northern California was really poor, white trash neighborhood. And I was sitting there hanging out, and we're all kind of BSing and drinking a beer and smoking a joint. And all of a sudden, I felt really comfortable and relaxed, and I realized it was because it reminded me of home. Back in the day when I was young, it was terrible. I mean, it was like filthy laundry and dog hair, and it was like a couch with rips in it, and like an entertainment center that's falling apart. And I had this subconscious sigh of relief to be back in that disheveled state. And I think that people will subconsciously fight to remain in their mind control, in their slavery underneath the spell, because they don't have any image or imagination for what it would be like without it. And you have to get there. So to me, I'm excited to read your book now, James, because it sounds like that's probably what you're doing, is one little chapter at a time. You're giving people a chance to consider imagining what it's like if it wasn't like this.
Yeah. That's why when you're going to program someone, when you're going to hypnotize someone, when you're going to and train someone, all those things, let me put it this way. A mother comes home from the store. She's putting the groceries away, and her toddler is wandering around on the floor, and he's playing near a light socket. A electrical plug-in. And the child is trying to kiss the electrical outlet. I don't know why, but he is. He's trying to kiss it, and he really wants to kiss it. The mother is going to, this is all instinct. The mother's going to go right up to that child and boom, like make a, I don't mean beat. What I mean is a jolt. She's going to introduce a jolt into the child. The jolt is the beginning of trauma programming. It is, and sleep, but it's different. It's, and be scared.
Yeah.
Like, and be in fear. It's an injection of being in fear. And a lot of parents will do it by jabbing, like with their finger. Like, this is all subconscious, but like when you train a dog, for example, you might just, you're trying to, it's cool. It's cool in the sense that you're interjecting a pulse. You have a feeling of fear. The mother has the fear, and she interjects it in the child. Now the child is like, what? And this means they're wide open. Their pupils have dilated. They are freaking ready for programming. And that's what trauma programming is. It's introducing trauma. It puts you in a state where now you're ready for the next phase. And then you introduce the new frequency. You introduce that new vibration. And that vibration is, John Jacob Jingle, don't you ever try and kiss that electrical outlet again. And it is a serious focus of will that is installed into the child, where now the child, because it was instant, here's the key, because it was instant, that child is like riding around on a road and you skip over a pothole but maybe you don't feel it because it happened where the wheels were just right. It's it's quick. In that same memory state, all the neurons were forming that was saying, here's what happens when I try and kiss an electrical outlet. Oh my God, my entire world blows up. Like, that's what happens. And so now they're entrained in that. Now imagine if instead the mother came up and said, oh, look at you. You're trying to kiss the electrical outlet. Hey, let's have a philosophical discussion about electricity and what it does to the tongue. Well, like it's none of that's ever going to work. That's not how you train. And if you reverse engineer that, now you understand why we become comfortable in a setting and why we have a resistance to leave that setting. Because we are a sine wave of thought as that's happening. We're going to naturally want to stay in that state unless it becomes uncomfortable. And then we're going to do one of two things. We're either going to actually, unless something happens, I should say, because you can actually induce programming through joy also. There's different ways to do these kind of trance things. In fact, elation is a form of programming too, because if you inject elation fast enough, then whatever was happening right before the elation is going to be entrained, associated with that elation. And you see that a lot in movies where it'll be, oh my God, I'm a beautiful woman and I have big boobies and I'm running through the forest. Oh my God, oh my God. So, you're painting this picture of this, helpless virgin kind of romp thing. And then you've got the Jason in the mask and he's got the knife. Think about what's happening there. You're taking two different vibrations and you're convincing the target that these things should go together. So you're taking arousal, sexual arousal, and then you're taking not violence, all the violence is there, but more importantly, you're taking the stalking, the principle of stalking someone. Sorry, I can't think of a good word to describe that, but you're taking that word and you're entraining it with arousal. That it's because those scenes are cutting back and forth so fast that you're able to do that same trick where, okay, and now that you're thinking about arousal, hey, check it out. Why don't we, violate someone's rights or whatever? And then the violence comes. The violence is almost like, here's the cherry on top to give you that cleanse, the palate cleanse, to make you feel like it really, really was tasted full, tasted like just heightened, where that's an elevator. It's meant to just
the pairing,
kind of
like
wrap
pairing.
in, make everything kind of go in there. I don't know. Sorry,
No, pairing, like you're pairing. The food analogy works, man. So you've got the big bite of the meal and you take a sip of the red wine or whatever. It's the pairing of the two. And that makes sense. I've always hated that, and I've always avoided most horror movies, especially cheesy ones, because even at a young age, I recognized the, if two teenagers are already being naughty and getting it on in the woods, a guy with a mask and a huge knife, a machete, shouldn't come storm in and switch it up when you're anticipating what they're gonna do. They're already being naughty. There's already a temptation outcome. And they switch it with usually with both of them being murdered and the girl being a more dramatic and drawn out murder. That's
it's a fear. They're injecting and then you can suck the fear prana from the situation. But that doesn't just happen in movies. That's if you look close enough, you will see that happens on the cereal aisle. I mean, that happens everywhere. You look at sigils, you look at icons all the time, and you're going to learn that. That's why Paris Hilton is eating a double cheeseburger on top of a car that was just washed. Like, you're just like, who comes up with that stuff? But again, it's only if you understand how the sigils and the archetypes work, but more importantly, how that entrainment works. Commercial only has a few minutes to do that. But that's why the companies own each other, because they will entrain over several different campaigns. So they will have a razor campaign that actually is complementing the Dove soap campaign. These are two different companies, but they're all trying to entrain the same thought, which is we need to, for example, we need to shame masculinity, or we need to promote, I don't know, anything, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
the class stuff, but it's always going to be entrained in this same kind of notion where it's like, picture the best possible version of life, boom, mind control, and now you hate men, or now you hate this, or now you love this, or whatever. It's always going to be that same formula. In fact, MKUltra, that stuff works off triggers, and that's really what we're doing. Is we're constantly being told, here are your triggers. Here are the things that should set you off and should key in different emotions. That's why I get so mad at culture, because we're rewriting ancient mythology. So we're taking something that used to be beautiful and we're turning it into something awful. Tesla's a perfect example of that. Like, there was a really cool guy named Tesla, and now look at what Tesla is. It's this totally different concept. In fact, Elon Musk himself says, "Oh, I like Edison better than Tesla." I mean, it's a constant. We're shitting on our sigils on purpose, and that's why because none of us are paying attention. No one's catching it. No one's saying, "Hey, the cross used to mean something before we hung a guy on it. Like, that sigil of the cross had a totally different meaning before we put someone on it. Now it has now it's a completely different meaning on top of that." And no one's noticing that, well, now we're fighting ISIS in the desert when ISIS used to be a goddess. It's constant. We're constantly shitting on our sigils and making ourselves feel worse. And they love that. The corporations love doing that. That's what they live for. It's more important than money.
Hey, I read a story a couple days ago. It's brand new. It's from studyfinds.org. And some of the things you're saying make me think about it, because you're talking about people being mind controlled into having all of these new triggers and feeling shame for a whole host of new things on an ever-growing basis. And so it made me think of the study that I read about here. The headline is "Stress Mess. 3 in 5 millennials say life is more stressful now than ever before." And that says 1/3 of millennials believe their lives are more stressful than the average person's life. I'm going to assume that by millennials, I guess they mean anyone born since the year 2000. I'm assuming that's, we're talking about adults here. So that's why I thought this list, this is the list of the top 20 stressful scenarios reported by millennials. It's just really funny what's on this list and what isn't. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. And then I just want to know if you have anything to say about what you think may have caused this. So the list is, and this is starting at 1 and going to 20, losing a wallet or credit card, argument with partner, commute or traffic delays, losing phone, arriving late to work, slow Wi-Fi, phone battery dying, forgetting passwords, credit card fraud, forgetting phone charger, losing or misplacing keys, paying bills, job interviews, phone screen breaking, credit card bills, check engine light coming on, school loan payments, job security, choosing what to wear, and number 20, washing dishes.
Holy crap! Yeah, I want to hear James's Please, James, tell us what you think of that list.
Nothing about kids, by the way, or anything having to do with the family, other than arguing with a partner. But go ahead, please.
Oh, all I can do is just, laugh, but also cry. But there's so much in there about the phone. Everything's about the phone, and the connectivity and the check engine light. I think that's interesting because it's like, I don't know what to do. I don't put me in a position where I'm powerless, And when I grew up, first of all, there was no check engine light, but when I grew up, that was fun. Like working on cars was fun. You know, trying to figure out why it wouldn't work was great. And man, I picked up a girl once because I fixed her car with a toothbrush. Like it had flooded, and I opened the hood, and I just happened to have a toothbrush. It probably looked really cool. Like it probably looked like I planned. It just worked out. Where I grabbed the toothbrush, I stuck it in the butterfly valve of the carburetor. I told her to start it. It started right up. Pulled the toothbrush out, shut the hood. And she was just enamored, like amazed at it. And I was looking at her like, well, no, it's just a butterfly. You know, you just push this here. But I'm telling you, like really impressed her. And like for years and years after that, she's like, oh, you fixed my butt, you know, too. And just like fawning over that action. In other words, as a guy, that's like, you want those check engine lights to come on. Like you that's going to make you want to be good at that. It's something that's fun. It's like, oh, let me see if I can solve this. It has many advantages, only one of which is, you know, making a cute girl smile. But
did you carry the toothbrush around with you for a while, like 6 months or a year after that? I might have kept it in my back pocket all the time.
In my car. I still have one, even though you don't see a butterfly valve anymore. You know, it doesn't have it anymore. So. Yeah, that list is concerning because it's all. But to be fair, you know, a long time ago, you were cool if you could name off a formula, you know, like a scientific formula. And now you're kind of lame if you're like going to start scrawling that down instead of just pulling up in an app, you know, and computing, you know, something. So it makes you slower to be dependent on yourself, because now there's a service that someone's created that's going to make that one specific task faster than you could ever do it on your own. Which I don't know if that's intentional or not. It probably is. But it's constantly, you know, telling you, well, just delegate, you know, just delegate, just delegate. And in fact, the ones that get by in society, the ones that are scoring, like the dude, I don't mean to guess, but I'm pretty sure this probably happens. The dude that gets the cute girl that are like, oh, I can't believe you figured it out. That's the dude that knows, no, go into your settings, turn off this, turn on this, and then access this, then install this app. And now you can have Google that, you know, gives you bananagrams every Tuesday. That's going to be what impresses, you know, the other sex. That's going to be, that probably is already, you know, that's what it's doing.
Well, yeah, you mentioned like a lot of things on the list have to do with the availability of the phone being charged, and the messages themselves are a cause of stress. So, you know, I assume that's, for one thing, you got to be available for your job, and for another thing, yeah, that all of your friends and family assume that you are going to be available and respond to them instantly and constantly over, you know, a long list of different apps and devices that you're supposed to be accessible on. And that, I think, is just like, you know, death by a thousand cuts. It's like any individual one thing isn't that stressful, but it's all piling up on people. And so, you know, they're, without embarrassment, accurately telling you what's causing them the most stress is that kind of stuff. And then the other stuff on the list is really about bills. They had different types of bills on the list, you know, among the 20. So I would have just put them all in one place, but they had, you know, several different categories of bills. But what I think is another thing that's interesting going on with young people is, of course, they never experienced the economy the way it was before, and they know it's shitty compared to the past, but of course they don't really know how much. And people my age only know a little bit of, you know, how bad it's gotten, because you would have to have lived through the golden years of, you know, the 50s and 60s to really have a feeling, and you'd have to have an accurate memory at this point, which very few of the oldsters do. So, you know, very few people are kind of aware of how relatively easy it used to be to get money out of the system that you need to live.
Yeah.
But so they're all feeling the stress of trying to do the impossible, but they can't even compare it to, you know, what it used to be. They don't really know what the problem is. And so that's when the shame mind control comes into play, I think, where everybody's blaming themselves. I'm not answering my emails fast enough, or my texts or whatever, or I don't have the latest phone, or damn it, you know, my charger keeps going down. My wife is distracting me too much. Whatever, you know, there's always some reason why you're bad, that you're not keeping up with what society expects you to do, even though it's becoming increasingly more literally impossible to do so. So yeah, I think everybody kind of feels stressed out and they feel bad about themselves, but they can't even really say why or what they wish would happen, you know? So it's very sad, I think.
Well, as the colony hive emerges, like that seems to be the new morphology for human, is that we kind of merge with a hive. And I'm seeing this now with the millennials that they're merging, where we weren't maybe so mergeful before, at least my generation and before that and stuff. And so the more you're forced to merge, the only way you can merge is if you weren't as independent, which means you would need to be more mutable to the hive that you've joined. And so a part of that byproduct, I think, is when we're seeing like the gender dysphoria and things like that, is because we're being entrained to be mutable. And because the ones that are mutable, it's just like the guy that knows where to go in your phone to turn on which setting to install which app. That becomes a viable skill. So too does being mutable. So too does being someone who's willing to flux or fit in to a spectrum of whatever's needed for a task or for a specific purpose. And so in a way, we're creating the human centipede. As we go every single day, it's becoming more and more beneficial to be someone who is willing to join the centipede than it is to be someone who's on the outside, who's favoring things like toothbrushes, and carburetors and things like that, who's wanting to be more independent. If you're going to work on your skill to be more independent, you are going to be less dependent, which means you're going to have less of a value to the hive around you. So it's naturally pushing us out. I say us, I'm assuming all of us feel that same way. Like I want us to go back to campfires. I want us to go back to complete decentralization where there's no movie star, where as you drive through the country, you get to Illinois and you're hearing, well, you've heard of Igby, the salad bar guy. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like, well, no, around here, Igby, the salad bar guy is famous. And you're like, what? And then you go see, and Igby does this weird thing with salad bars. I don't even know what I'm talking about. But what I mean is that that's what becomes decentralized. There becomes our local, it's the Davy Crockett syndrome, where all across the country, these different local heroes come up. And those local heroes are completely reflective of the flavor of that area. So they become organic, like we're in Florida. So what's really good right now is, these shrimp. And when we're in North Carolina, what's really good is these green beans or whatever. It becomes the lay of the land should be able to dictate culture. Like the lay of the land should be able to spring up its crop of ideas, of government, of culture, and of military, of militia. All those things should be styles that erupt from that situation. So in Georgia, let's cut Georgia into two parts, and let's have a north of Atlanta and let's do it three parts. And let's cut it in three like a Neapolitan ice cream. And at the very top, we've got the North Georgia mountains, which are some of the most treacherous mountains east of the Mississippi. It's got Blood Mountain on the Appalachian Trail, and the Army Rangers training. I can't hear you, by the way. I think the audio is cut out.
My audio's cutting out?
Oh, never mind. I hear you now. I didn't hear that.
I just said real quiet Blood Mountain because I'd never heard of Blood Mountain. But go ahead, James, please.
Yeah, it's on the Appalachian Trail, and if you go there, you'll find there's a lot of Army Rangers that go there and train and do stuff. The militia that would come out of the north, like those would be like these mountain paratrooper dudes who could really, withstand this all kinds of different environment. But then if you come down in the very southern part of Georgia, in that bioregion, you're looking at a coastal swampland kind of sort of motif. So you're looking at these badass militia dudes that are like, no, actually, we learned how to develop a gator camouflage where we look like an alligator and we come on the land in these swamp boats, and we're pretty badass too. When you've got like this Cajun Navy, division, you've got all this different cavalry of ideas, of nuance, of humanity, really, that are allowed to take over and grow again, instead of it being there's a Hollywood pyramid that dictates, or there's a Washington pyramid that dictates. No, you're a sergeant, you're a specialist in E2, you're a specialist in radio, you're a specialist in submarines. It's that satanic system is going to be a completely different system, and it's going to it's already done what it's already done. It's delegated and decided. Here's the social media platform. Here's the website search engine. Here's the golden child that gets the password. Here's the scapegoat that we're going to pretend to take in and solve all your problems. It's a constant delegation of everything. Like once you delegate a little bit of yourself, you wake up and you turn around and go, we don't have our culture anymore. We don't have nothing. We're everything's dictated.
Well, that's what the list that Tracy read. It made me realize something I've talked about over and over again is the idea of paralleling the main factor, the what I would call reality. Like, so you have reality, whatever it is, plug it in there, and so you make kind of a crappy copy of it and you put it up here. And you play that next to reality so that you're using the false reality. You're paralleling the real situation. You're not trying to stop it or ignore it or avoid it or change it. You're just kind of making a reasonable duplicate so that people will migrate onto your false reality. And I would say that whole list reflects that in a huge way. That because, what do we really need in life and what are our real concerns? Well, we really need air. You're going to be up short in a pretty brief amount of time without air. And after a while, you need food and water, you need shelter, you need clothing probably, companionship. What are the things that are dangerous? Like, up here where we are, the winter's pretty dangerous. If you don't have all those other things consistently in order and at least a reasonable stockpile, you might come up short. And then, then the cold is going to get you, or starvation's going to get you. Maybe a wild animal's going to get you. But none of those concerns were on the list. The concerns were all fear of things that aren't dangerous. Like if all of their fears came true, they would be set free, according to the list. Like, you quit worrying about your debts, you don't give a fuck about your phone, so you're free. Now what? What are you going to do? Maybe you'll have to notice the sun is shining, or maybe you'll have to notice that it would be if the chemtrails weren't covering it, or whatever. That's a... So I would say, and of course, when you start talking about the hive, James, it always makes me think of the communitarianism. I know I've pointed that out to people over and over again, but that is the core of it, is that the behind the communitarian philosophy is the idea that the needs of the quote-unquote global community or local community or whatever community, the needs of that trump the needs of the individual, and that we focused on individual needs for too long, and we've gratified them for too long. So now everyone is bad again. You're unhealthy in your belief that your freedom and independence is as valuable as you think it should be. And the reason it's not is because there's a community in need or in want over here. And so you're going to have to acclimatize and adjust. And so the people that can't fit into that are going to stick out real obvious here in the next 5 or 10 years. Because most people, as far as I can tell, they're going with it unwittingly, but they like it. They become attuned to it, and they're comfortable in it. So they start the process of self-regulating, of governance versus government. They've got us shaming and correcting and policing each other without any formal architecture. The pyramid for that part's already disappearing. Now it's, oh, James, please don't say that on the RX Only Picture Show. My gosh, I'm sorry, everyone. I can't believe he talked about Igby. Gee whizzikers, that's... What was it? Would you say Igby who? I want to remember that guy. I'm requesting now officially live from my chat and anyone that sees this in the reruns that we want memes, illustrations. We breathe life into Igby. What was it? Was it what did he say, Jim?
Igby the salad bar.
Yeah, the salad bar guy. Because that's so true. Me and my buddy one time drove right past the monument on the highway of all the presidents. I can't think of it. Rushmore. We drove right past Rushmore. We were like in a reverie of a road trip going to Iowa. And we got farther down the road and we were kind of tired. and it's the South Dakota Corn Palace, right? And they used to build a whole palace out of just corn. And now it's just like a basketball gymnasium or whatever. It's a big building. It's like the big local, building where you can play basketball in the auditorium and everything. But they still decorate the whole outside of it with all the sheaves of corn. And so that made me think of the same kind of a thing. Because like you read old Mark Twain and old fiction, and what you're talking about is very real. There's a curiosity that's surrounding some individual, that it's their talent or even it's just their weirdness, And that, all the stuff you're saying about not using states but using, you called it a bioregion?
Yeah, bioregionalism.
Yeah, the bioregion thing made me imagine if we divided everyone up according to the growing areas.
Yeah, because North Carolina, that's where I'm at. In Western Carolina, we have more of a mountainous Appalachian setting. In fact, where I live it's the only place in the country that has a certain climate to it. And it's very much like sort of a Scotland or an Ireland kind of thing. And but in the middle of North Carolina, it's all flatland tobacco. And then once you get to the east, man, you're dealing with a complete, it's almost saturated all the way with water. So, you've got brackish water, you've got fresh water, it's just a completely different climate. So we shouldn't be having to compete with each other in our state for resources from the federal government to address our needs. Our needs are blurred. Our needs are muted by each other. And so we're never going to be able to get that back. And people forget that we take our taxes and send it to Washington like a Plinko machine on The Price is Right. And it's like they drop the quarter down and it trickles, and anyone gets to take whatever piece they want out of that.
Yeah.
And then it comes back to the state. Then the state does the same thing. They put it in their own Plinko machine. And then your county gets it back. And then your county does the exact same thing. And they're going to put it in their machine. And then your town's going to get it. And then your town isn't even going to give it to you. Like, they're not even going to give it to you because they have their own stuff. They want to do stuff with that money. And their town gets bigger, the more money they keep. So it's screw the Plinko machines. Why can't we take a hiatus of federal coercive taxation as long as we are giving that money to our local grassroots community in some sort of effort? Why can't we decide where we want to put that money? Why can't I put a contract on my dollar bill that I send to the government? And this is something that blockchain would help to, as an example, like through an Ethereum contract. Why can't I say, fine, I will give you money, government, but here are the things you may not do with it. You may not spend it in this area, you may not spend it in this area, you may not spend it in this area, but you may spend it in this area. If we could put contracts on our money again, then I'm all for coercive taxation to the federal power. Fine. If we have to do it, fine. But give me a contract where I can assign where that money goes. And only then can we decentralize this beast, because it's never going to work any other way. But that's why I go back to what I was telling you guys about earlier, which is I don't think this is real. I don't think the government is real. What we think is government is not. It's closer to a relationship you might find in a prison where you've got a warden and you have free time. And during recess, all of us inmates decided 200 years ago that we were going to create our own rules, by God, that during recess, this was our land. And the warden's like, that sounds great. Give them paper and crayons and let them do whatever they want to do. But here are the rules. Lights out by 7. Everyone's got to make a license plate. And here's what you get to eat. As long as you do those things, we can let you set up the play yard to put your weights over here, your basketball court over here, whatever. We don't mind how the gerbils set up their play wheel. And because of that freedom of architecture, we are gerbils wandering around going, look how free we are, man.
Yeah.
We have built the tallest gerbil wheel ever. And, and look how great we are, you know? And meanwhile, there's these other, they are people. They're not even gods. There are these other people that are looking at us going, God, you guys are stupid. Like, you will keep doing this no matter what. And I could be wrong. It could be that I am just crazy or some kind of borderline label that someone wants to say, you know, that, well, here's what's going on with James. It could be that. Or it could be that what we think is the government is not actually the government. And as a quick example, look at the EPA. I used to be under the impression that the EPA meant the Environmental Protection Agency, meaning that this is an agency that's been tasked with protecting the environment. But that's not what the EPA does. The EPA says we're going to grant immunity to whoever we want by giving them a blessing of they are not hurting the environment. Monsanto was given that blessing. If there wasn't an EPA, and if we had a real justice system, I could sue Monsanto. All of us could sue Monsanto. In fact, 50 states divided into bioregions, maybe 150 bioregions, could each separately sue Monsanto. Why? Because Monsanto is selling products in all of these bioregions. And each of those bioregions gets to say, look, I don't care what happens in Washington. You're in Mississippi now. And in Mississippi, we got our own rules down here. And this is how we work. Now, Monsanto, you're going to come down here and you're going to do a ceremony where we call a kissing of the starfish because you were found guilty. Now, no, we don't want your money. We want you to come down on the public square and you're going to kiss everyone's ass who you wronged because that's how we do justice down here. That's what I want. I want America made up like that, where before you send your product into Mississippi, you're like, holy shit, what's going to happen?
You better make sure it's right, man. We're going to end up kissing the starfish.
if we had that kind of system around, think about how difficult it would be for one corporation to take over. Like, they would be a constant struggle of, oh my God, the bioregion of Mississippi is at it again. And now they want to do this. And if we want to sell our product there, that's what we have to go through. And of course, Mississippi would suffer, you know, if they had their own litigation that was too much or too hard, you know, then the corporation could fight back by saying, oh, we have the new episode of HBO, but we're not going to distribute it in Mississippi because they have the kissing with starfish. You know, I mean, there would be a war for sure. You know, it'd be a war between corporation and government. But that war is supposed to be there. And we're supposed to create a battleground where these people have to fight fairly for the most important thing that we have, which is us, our essence, our resource. Right now, it doesn't happen that way. Right now, one person decides. The EPA said Monsanto was clean. Therefore, I'm throwing your lawsuit out. You're not going to be able to appeal that because we've already granted them. We've already told them that what they do is clean. I think government is that. It's a racketeer. I'm talking about federal government. And don't hear me wrong. I'm not trying to say we need to get rid of all government, but we need to decentralize. We need government that has to be looked at in the face. I need a leader that I can frankly go over to his house if things really got out of hand, that he's locally accessible to me. That's what we need. And I want that leader to be terrified to go, oh man, I don't want to screw up. Like I don't want to break the law.
I agree with that completely. That it seems like for hell, as long as I've been alive, and as far as I can tell in history, I mean, it seems like in the United States, the histories, there is a time in the past when people were more civic and more moral and did have a greater concern, and that you might know a bad town from a good town. But it seems like everyone's been demoralized for so long that there just doesn't seem like it's possible for that accountability to happen, even on the local level. You know, like here in Walla Walla where we are, we've got a board of directors essentially. You know, we don't have a mayor as far as I know, and I have no idea who's on the board. You know, every once in a while some little piece of news will crop up where it'll pry its way into my newsfeed that something's happening, but I pay no attention to it, And I'm certainly not going to go sit in the town hall meetings. I mean, they did recently in a town nearby. They had Nestle come in and try and buy up all the water rights, and the person sitting on the that little section of the water rights was in negotiations with Nestle and hadn't told anybody. So the whole local valley did jump up and freak out about that, and everyone kind of ran Nestle off for now. And so that made me pretty happy. And I did share some emails and comment and share on some Facebook posts being like, yeah, don't sell out to Nestle. Look around. Look what happens when you do that, They're going to literally buy our aquifers and drain them out from underneath us permanently and damage them in the process. So don't do it, But overall, so there's one tiny example of good, but the examples of the despondency and disengagement far, far overwhelm it. Nobody knows what's going on out here, but there's a whole enclave, there's a hive already existent that are definitely communitarian. They know it, especially at the top. And I say those words, James, because communitarian law is the new structure of law that they're bringing out worldwide. And it's a thing. It's not like calling people call it the technocracy, or they say the NWO and all these different titles. Communitarian law is a real thing that you can go verify. And all these people have been trained through the Delphi method, the consensus process, not only trained themselves, brought into consensus and in-tuned, like you said, to something, attuned, but they've been taught how to do that in their community. So they make it like, well, we had a community meeting and everyone agreed this is the route by which we'll move forward. And that's not really true. They might even really have a community meeting, but the members of the community aren't you and me and Tracy and Jim. It's people that have a stake, in the local community. And then on top of that, even amongst those people, if they disagree or have problems, they have an outcome predetermined before they set everybody up at round tables and have a speaker and someone controlling the whole thing. They say that we're going to reason to a consensus, but they start with a predetermined outcome, and you can look it up. They call it the Delphi method. That's come from Rand Corporation.
Yeah, the Hegelian dialect too is the same thing. Just
exactly
reformulated like that. Well, see, under the bioregional system, I expect for corruption to occur because that's what happens when you have a bottleneck of resources that someone's going to corrupt it. But I want that corruption to happen 150 times before someone controls the entire country. And while that's happening, I want there to be another, because everyone's so bioregional, because everyone's so just freaking lit, there's going to be this rogue company that James True created that comes in and mind control proofs the community and teaches them how this foreign source will come in and infiltrate them and take over. And it will be just another service that someone else offers. And that town will subscribe to that resource of learning how to manage their town. This is even out like a stretch. I ran for mayor here of my town. I did not get elected. They did not like my ideas, but I ran and I went to the debates and I was a little bit too zealous. I think I'm learning in my political career that I need to learn how to tone things down. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to do that, but through that experience, I saw what I've seen a lot because I've been active for a while, like environmentalism and different stuff like that. What I mean is that I've looked in engine rooms of government a lot, and I think that there's always going to be a constant problem with having a government, but there's also always going to be a way to expose it and to fix it, and it takes a healthy. So like when I ran for mayor, it took a lot of time. I had to now I have to read the town bylaws. I need to understand those. I need to know how the planning board works. I need to look at all the things that we've passed as a town since our inception and, kind of understand them. It was a really big effort to even run for mayor, more or less be elected. If I wasn't paying 40%, and let's break down what 40% is. Every Monday and every Tuesday, you were getting up and you were walking your body to DC, and you were saying, what do you want me to do today? How can I give you my time today? That's every single Monday and Tuesday. And consider 40% of your income goes into taxes from that. Imagine if you had that free time. Imagine if you had that free time and we had a culture which encouraged this kind of grassroots support through some kind of, I don't know what it looks like, but the point is that Monday could be government day, like local day, Monday could be local community day. And that's the day where, well, no, down here in Mississippi, we build docks on local day, and up here in North Carolina, well, we build kilts and play bagpipes because we think it makes the friggin' valley beautiful that there's bagpipes playing. Like, it's totally different priorities, And in Illinois, people are doing weird things with salad bars. It's everyone's going to be able to have their own different version of what that community looks like. But here's the beauty of this plan. It exposes what works. When you have 150 bioregions, I'm just using that number. If you just had like that many bioregions that were each trying as hard as they could, each of those bioregions would be stealing ideas from other bioregions, going, wow, did you see how they did that park? Where they went in and freaking put a golf cart path from every single house in that bioregion. Now no one there needs a car. I mean, they still have cars, but wow, it was like such a cool thing they did. And everyone else would be like, I want to do that. Or those guys put a zip line in. Now they have a zip line in school. They're freaking going out and they're strapping their kid to the zip line and they're sending him down the mountain on a zip line and he's landing in school. It's like the coolest place in the world to live. Again, it's just, and I realize there's probably some problems with putting your child. But my point is that
my dream when I was a kid, James, was to have roller coasters be transportation, and that you could have parallel tracks for one that was kind of risque and loop-de-loops and big drops, and the other one that just lifted you up high enough and let you down slow enough for grandma didn't have to ride the teeth-rattling roller coaster. But in that progression in my mind, I always imagined it eventually graduating to having private roller coaster cars. So yeah, I can totally get digging with the idea of looking at the town next door and being like, man, if we don't move there, we need to at least do that here, right?
Yeah. And that empowers everybody, That's when everyone has a little bit of power. And that's when everyone starts caring, Because right now there's no power. It's so sad to watch anything in DC because we have no influence, unless you start a podcast or sell a book and you become a nationwide bestseller. And even then, the ones that are the best sellers are ones that are being propped up by other people anyway. So it's I don't even know how penetrating an idea like what I'm saying is. I don't even know if enough people could even hear that idea. Because who in the world in mainstream media is going to say, hey, let's run that interview with the dude who's talking about bioregions? I mean, you're like, no, you're not doing that. No, that's the worst. No.
So would you say that's the position that you wrote the book from then, is to like get your feelers out, at least on a personal level, to find out how many people are willing to consider it and kind of give you feedback, or like get to me, the book, the most recent book you published, the way you describe it sounds like it's like your own attempt to, in a way, to go back to what Tracy said, that like, okay, if we acknowledge that we're all mind controlled and we're all under a spell, then let's use something more like righteous or genuine influence to start the process, even if it is kind of passive in its, passive works better with people if they're in trauma or if they're in trouble than aggressive. So would you say that was kind of your motivating drive, was like, hey, I think I can untangle a few of these things even if we don't see long-term permanent progress, at least this, starts clipping the zip ties or something like that?
So in my perfect world with the book, it's good to sell enough copies or meet someone who understands what I'm talking about the campfire revolution kind of concept. And I will find a way to have a campground. And on this campground, I will really, really, really mess up the system, because I'm going to create an alternative to college in which people will, instead of having to spend 4 years of college, they're coming to this campground. And maybe they're doing like an 8-week thing. Maybe they're doing a 4-week thing. Maybe they're doing a 2-year thing. But they're coming to this campground and they are using it as a temple of man. This is where Pythagoras and Socrates used to go, and they would travel to Egypt to do it. And they would go there and they would learn the skills of alchemy. And they would take those skills and bring them back to their community, and they would do things with them.
What did you say it was called? I didn't hear what you said.
Again?
The name of the school? What did you say it was?
Temple of Man.
The Temple of Man. Okay, I just didn't hear you. Thank you.
Yeah. In Egypt, sorry, I should actually clarify. In Egypt, I'm pretty sure that the Temple of Luxor, which is also known as the Temple of Man, was probably where Pythagoras and Socrates went. They spoke of going to learn sacred language, sacred knowledge and gnosis and alchemy. Some said Egypt, some said other places far away. The point is that someone had this idea before, my campground idea, but they had a giant temple. I don't need a giant temple. I can do it with campsites and a robot lab, But the idea is that people would come to this campground, and it's completely focused around a nightly group fire. That becomes the new center for people. Is what they would each do throughout the day would be brought to the fire and shared. Here's what happened. Like, I had an awful day yesterday, 2 days ago. I got in this fight on Twitter, and it was just awful. Like, if I had a group fire, I could go to that fire, maybe not that night, but maybe like the next night. And I could bring that to the fire and say, holy shit, I got so mad because this happened and then this happened and then they said this and I said this. Like, it would be an opportunity to core dump, but also constructively grow. It's something real. In other words, it's not the Fox show, about three witches take off each other's clothes as they navigate the world of having a lot of money yet not having jobs tonight. Difference to it, of here's the struggle I went through, or here's today I lost my goat and it was the saddest thing that ever happened. And for a moment, everyone around that fire feels the loss of that person's goat. It's like, I know how much you care about that goat. You weaned it. His name was Billy the Kid. It was the most awesome thing in the world. And at the end of the night, people are going to bed without trauma. They're going to bed with resolved issues. And all it takes is listening. Like, all it takes is just it's so easy to listen, and it feels so good. And I'm not making this stuff up. What I mean by that is that I used to do this for a living. I worked in a kids camp, and these kids it was right before where they would go to jail. They were sent to this campground, and I was their counselor. And I'm telling you, man, I saw how powerful that magic worked. And I saw how powerful it was that everyone was freaking cold at night, or everyone was wet in the rain. Everyone was feeling, I'm not saying that you had to stay around the fire, by the way, but we did. But what I mean is that we were all exposed to the elements. We were fungus again. And those elements were causing us all to blend together more. We were all cycling together. We all were feeling each other's joy and pain together. And that's where, just super magical stuff happened. And so the long story, sorry, but the purpose of the book is to create this place and have that place be an incubator. Because I'm telling you, man, once I set it up, someone's going to see it and they're going to steal that idea, and it's going to be the greatest thing in the world. And they're going to do it even better. And it's, they're going to turn into, well, we have a salad bar race, every year, or whatever. Everyone's going to do something different. It's going to be wild. Mine's going to be, because I write software, because I'm into writing and stuff like that. It would be more like robotics, more like computer coding and things like that. But it would be based on this campground. And, there'd be a YouTube channel. Some of the kids would be creating a YouTube content from what we do. Other kids would be, maybe the campground would actually sell a product itself that would get better each time. And then you'd start to see these multi-label projects going on, where the kids that are at the school said, no, we want to come up with this ice cream cone maker, and we need this to do it and this to do it. So they're starting that project, they're doing their thing, and then they're leaving with a business. They're leaving with skills. They're leaving with a freaking toothbrush that they can go out in the world and start any car, no matter how much it's raining, no matter how cold it is. They have the ability to do that. And that's how you kill the cabal. That's how we defund this central freaking Leviathan, is that we cut it off and say, we don't need you. And that's really the purpose of the book. It's a very selfish goal. It's to have this place. And I will freaking love it.
I think we all agree, man. It's not just us here either. I'm seeing this theme over and over again enough on the internet that as jaded as I am, I still love it. Because I always feel like they're just feeding us another line of bullshit, you know. Like, oh, here they come. They're bringing us a new idea, something shiny. And, you know, if you accept it, you just end up pretty much back where you were, only different, maybe worse, you know. You know, I think we all feel that way, but I think we all still feel like more things are happening now than we've ever seen in our lifetime. So it gives us a different brand of hope than we're used to having. Like the QAnon crap, I'm very jaded and skeptical on it, but I definitely see it as something. You know, the fact that so many child sex trafficking arrests and similar things are in the press, I still see it as something. I can't say that I even think it's definitely positive, but it wasn't happening 10 years ago. It definitely wasn't happening 40, 50 years ago. So, you know, Tracy, what do you think of the campground idea? I'm trying to imagine what Tracy's campsite would look like if it was permanent, and so I kind of wanted to get your input on that.
Well, what I'm thinking about really, this is on right, yeah. What I'm thinking about is the fact that, especially in the western half of the United States, almost half of the land is owned and controlled by the federal government. And that's going to include a lot of the national parks and places that people do use now for campgrounds. I assume you're talking about land that you would privately own. But I did want to bring that up because if you're talking about in the future that there would be a lot of these things, at a certain point that's going to come up, I think, is, you know, the actual, you know, what land are we going to use? And I think that this is an important factor anyway, and just of everything you've been talking about federal control of things and how we are lulled into a sense of feeling like we're free when we're still in a prison. The fact that we ignore that the federal government is controlling half of the land on the western half of the United States. Here in Washington and Oregon, it's certainly the case. And we're in a state now where it takes $500,000 to buy even the smallest house, and even undeveloped land is going for similar amounts. So it seems to me obvious that even if you didn't, you know, obviously it's not all going to turn into high density cities all of a sudden, nor would we want it to. But that's got to be a factor here with the price of land and the fact that the federal government's holding half of it. And obviously, if that was put on the market, even if there were restrictions on its use, still that's going to lower the overall prices of land and housing in general. So, and plus, if it was put on the market or at least locally controlled, you know, that's a huge amount of the federal government's power, I would think. So, is that something that you've thought about at all? Is the federal control of land and getting that back to the local control?
Yeah, I got really mad at Patagonia and North Face, REI, because when Trump signed a law that returned national forest land to states, it was like a year ago or something, and they immediately launched a campaign saying, this is terrible, you know, look at Trump's destroying the environment. But Trump was taking land that belonged to the state and giving it back to them. Trump was saying, hey, state, I think you should be in charge of your land again. But because keep in mind the mind control, we are dirty cancer on earth is what we're told. And so we need to stay off land. See, we believe that we're not allowed to be on certain land. And so therefore we've created this idea where we should protect it. We should keep all the people off of it. And we should let the federal government protect it. Like that's somehow making things better. I want to remind everybody that during the strategic oil reserves, a long time ago, one day, our federal government said, it is in our national interest that we store a shit ton of oil. We've got to have a shit ton of oil. Like a lot of oil, a lot. Now, from the outside, when you're naive, you would say, wow, my government is on top of it. They knew that they needed to save a lot of oil. I think that's what caused the oil prices to go up. I think they did it on purpose. I think they said, hey, let's buy stock in oil because next year we're going to freaking start squeezing it. And we're going to buy it all up from the government. We're going to make the price go higher, and it's going to do this and do this. And then the next thing you know, you've got an economy built off of it. Those exact same dudes that did that have said, we have to go solar. And they created a brand new industry that they already were ahead on to jump on and bottleneck off the exact same thing. So again, land is being hoarded because when you hoard something, you create that vacuum, you create that bottleneck, and it's always going to be a problem.
Oh yeah, could you imagine if, Tracy, just if in the state of Washington they freed up all the federal land and said, hey, start developing, especially if there was no restrictions and we could all start by camping and develop either into semi-nomadic and or, you know, so that your shelter is this not such great concern for safety and regulation, you know. If we don't want to put a foundation under here because we don't expect to live in it for 50 years, as long as it's protecting us and we're happy, who cares, right? We want to put the wood stove in the middle of a round house and then take it down when the winter comes. That's our business or whatever, you know.
It would be great here, and the idea that we're all going to destroy the environment here in Washington State is ridiculous. That's not the culture that we have here, but it's obvious that people, again, who are in fear and feel like they're safe now would be threatened by that. So anyone who has a federal pension, anybody who has any kind of pension that is tied up in land prices, and they just want to sit on their asses and collect money for doing nothing, for having that investment, well, they don't like it if the market forces change for any reason. But if you're a little bit more willing to, spend a few hours a week talking to your broker or something, then, a land free-for-all like you're talking about, a whole bunch of land going on the market all of a sudden, well, that's an investment opportunity for people who can take advantage of it. That's great for them. But yeah, if you just want to collect a paycheck for that land that you bought 30 years ago at a much smaller price, then you're really mad now. Or if you just want to collect a paycheck because you did a job for the federal government for a few years and you think that you should be paid for that for the rest of your life and never have to do anything else, never have to adjust in any way, then I guess you don't like that idea. Or you're so paranoid that you think, oh, well, if you let people use the land, then, maybe they would get in the way of a spotted owl or something.
Yeah,
as if that's the way we are around here. Come on, we tend to be the opposite, right? So yeah. I almost think that Washington people wouldn't know what to do with kind of power like that because, yes, we're all trained to think that we have to have the federal government protect land when, in fact, local governments could control it. And not only that, but most people don't want to just trash everything, Oh yeah, people would love it. They would love an opportunity like that.
In my mind, if they switched everything over right now, even to just being a free-for-all, up here in the Pacific Northwest especially, and it sounds to me like the same thing where James is at, even if you tried to get crazy and really screw things up, all of the most powerful people would mount up against you and very politely let you know that that's going to need to stop. And if you didn't stop, they'd shoot you to death. That's what they want to do already, just in the mountains. If you go tear up the mountains with your four-wheel drive, litter, and leave crap all over the place, people get angry. It's like as empowered with anger as I see them get anymore. It's like, they're closing down the back roads, man. We all love it. That's why everybody's up here,
Yeah. Well, the bioregion, if you incorporate bioregion, you incorporate pride. If you incorporate national land, you incorporate non-pride. You cannot expect someone to have pride if they don't own the land. And if there's a fence around it that says property of the U.S. government, you don't own the land. And so you're gonna break that fence down and you're gonna run through it and you're gonna treat it like shit. Because it's not your land. Not only that, but it's owned by a baron that's never even here. The federal government doesn't even come out there and look at the land. All they do is just put a fence up around it. Meanwhile, we're told, look how dirty we are. But go to Italy. Italy has some of the best wine and olive oil you could ever imagine. People have been living there for thousands and thousands of years. And they were dirty people. They would fuck in public. They would poo wherever they wanted. They would make a mess. And it's some of the most beautiful food comes out of there. We are not dirty. And we can ride our four-wheelers through the frickin' forest. And I'm telling you, it'll work out. Because the bioregion's going to step in and they're going to go, man, we really love Devil's Tower. Here's what we want to do. You know, no motorized vehicles past this point, blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is, there's a million ideas like this, and this is what you do on a local level. When I was running for mayor, the only reason why I ran is because before that I was on this wildlife rescue board, and I was trying to expand our territory. Like, we had an acre, okay, where we could fix wildlife. It's just enough for like a flight cage, a bobcat cage. You know, we had a few other things, and then we got some wolves in. A guy had a private zoo. The sheriff closed them down. They gave us the wolves. We had the wolves just temporarily. We were trying to find a home, but that spurred me to say we really need more land. And the town had about 16 acres. It was a little bit far away, but it was all workable. It was like, we can make this work. And I just spent so much time, like talking to this person, talking to that person, talking, the town. It was so great because at one time I had it where this super rich land baron was willing to give his land to this wildlife center only if the town would come in and build him a road. Like, it's this crazy deal, that I had worked out,
Yeah, right.
It's like, and now I have to say that idea fell through, so I don't get to tell you I made it happen, but that's not the point. Like, it was close. And if I was a better politician, I think I might have been able to pull it off. But the point is that all that was happening spurred because of the bioregion, because of what was local. There's no way that I could have negotiated that deal making sure that it first went through the federal government first. There's no freaking way that would have ever been able to happen. That kind of stuff can happen all around us all the time, every single day. I think that if I would have gotten to be mayor, if the town was just more into crazy people, I could pass a rule about 5G and say, hey, you can do 5G wherever you want, but you're not doing it up here. And it would be a very difficult fight, because they're going to fight me instantly, because telecoms have the mind control in place where it's so messed up, because our land, every one of us, our land is dug up and it is subleased to a corporation that owns the telecom inside the ground right there. That needs to be unconstitutional. We need to pass a law that says, no, you do not own the telecom here. That contract is void. You can run your copper through our land if you want, but every single person that owns that land, you're going to have to kiss the starfish, man. If you're going to come down in Mississippi, you're going to do things the way Mississippi wants you to do them. And that's just the way it's going to be. That's how you destroy a cabal. You completely saturate their entire life's work with how do we gain control again of this decentralized monster. We have to convince every single piranha, every single one. We don't get to talk to the head Leviathan head and go, we want this, we will give you that. No, they have to negotiate with every single one. And I'm telling you, that's going to end. It's not going to end corruption, but it's going to end big corruption. It's going to make a boiling pot of soup, and these bubbles are going to burst, here and there, where it's going to build up, and there's all this corruption, and people are going to turn around to me and say, your stupid bioregional idea is killing us here because it used to be better. But it's going to work. I'm telling you, it's going to work.
So, James, I got a question, because I know Tracy wrote probably the first book I read of hers. I got for free for joining her email list, if I remember correctly, and it's called Money Grows on the Tree of Knowledge. And it's an even deeper history of money, I would say, than most people. Most people are familiar now with the Federal Reserve, fractional reserve banking, whereas, as we all know, even 10 years ago that wasn't the case. 15 years ago it really wasn't the case. People didn't understand that their money wasn't backed by anything. But Tracy takes it even farther back, connects it to the Templars, connects it to the goddess temples and everything. And as you're saying all these things, I'm imagining the problem of graduating interest and money and the whole idea of a fractional system and all the things that, to me, I see that system and the court system that you were describing as the Temple of Baal. I see it really as, the front and back door of the same system, or the, two churches across the street from each other. They're both Protestant or whatever, So being a computer developer guy, do you have faith and believe in the idea of the blockchain and the cryptocurrencies? And because I know I'm still pretty skeptical on it. I haven't invested any of it. Not that I have a ton of money to invest, but I've looked at it. I mean, they pulled the carpet out from underneath it this year. It looked like to me. Ethereum just went in the tank. I know Bitcoin's way down. I looked at Holochain. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's kind of similar to blockchain. So I'm curious, where's your take on the future of money? If we're going to keep with your kind of semi-utopian vision, a more decentralized, local, the center of everything is local, so that we're all working in a bioregion or whatever. Where's the money part come in?
Well, I'm really curious what Tracy's going to say about this, because
Yeah, we can start with Tracy for sure.
I'm in flux over the definition. I want to say first real quick that I think one mind control is that telling people that money's bad. I think money's good. In fact, money requires trust. So money breeds trust in a society. However, the money that we have is issued by evil people. And so the energy of that issue is inserted into our money. And what we need is if you find an artist that you really like and they do paintings and maybe they have like 100 prints made, you'll look at one of those prints and down at the very bottom, there'll be their signature and it'll say 2 of 100. And when you see that, you're like, oh, that's special. I have number 2 of 100. We need money that says, this is bill number 7 of 7 billion. And that needs to be verifiable. We need to put value back into money. And so in my view, the only way to do that is through a blockchain technology. What's beautiful about blockchain is that it's open source in the sense that we can create our own white paper. And if we're not comfortable with the Bitcoin node system, or if we're not comfortable with the Ethereum node system, we can create another node system. If I had this campground, I'm not saying I have to have this first, but here's an example of what I mean. If I had this campground, one of the classes I would offer is creating a local blockchain. The local blockchain would be like a freaking lightsaber shoved right up the ass of Satan. I mean, it would be so freaking powerful, because you would have a coin that only holds value in the local economy. It does have value outside of that, but what I mean is that its value is greater when it's spent inside the geographical
and
area.
We're seeing it start, right? You're seeing it start with New York coin and even Walmart coin. So you're seeing, I would say your idea is more organic and more, more genuine, to not have it. But we're seeing people already, we're seeing the big boys mock what sounds like,
And that's the danger of blockchain is also the liberation of blockchain. And so I personally like blockchain. However, I've seen the mind control against it. And I understand that the 256-bit encryption is probably a myth. Like, to you and me, it's encrypted,
right?
But not to Satoshi. Whoever Satoshi is, it's not encrypted to him, and he knows exactly where that's going. But I don't know how we're ever going to live in a world until we get fully decentralized that isn't going to have something like that. In other words, we already have that now. We have it worse though, because we have a monopoly printing machine, and one person has all that paper. And so that's why we're so messed up right now. So it's hard for me to show a lot of sympathy for someone who's against blockchain unless they have something different than fiat to trump it. And they don't, because you're not going to run the world on gold. We are psychically connected now across the world, and we cannot psychically transmit gold yet. Now, when we can do that, let's go with gold, but we can't right now. So we have to have some kind of blockchain. And the only way I can see that blockchain, this is what's a little bit different than Walmart, is this local blockchain. The reason why it would be more valuable in the area is because the area would have to be the node to resolve it. And I hope I'm not getting too technical with the listeners, but the node blockchain is verified. And right now, all Bitcoin transactions are verified by a group of people who own nodes. Right now, Google owns those nodes. So you could pretend that Bitcoin is safe, but the fact is that the people that own the computers that resolve the Bitcoin are all right now owned by the same people. A local blockchain could have a rule on it where I'm not able to resolve this transaction unless it comes from someone who's not big. It's an interesting way of having a contract, because the blockchain would be heavy because it would take a while to resolve, but it would literally go up to someone and say, can you verify this transaction for me, Mr. Node? And the node would say, I'd love to, let me help. And then it would say, okay, before I do you work for the bad guy?
Right.
And then it would have to say, yeah, I do. And it's like, well, I can't have you resolve me, sorry. You're not going to get a profit from resolving this local chain. I'm going to have to go to somewhere else. And then here's what's going to happen. Some kids at a campground are going to set up a server, and this node server is going to be resolving local blockchain, and they're going to be making money from that. So now you've got this new economy built off of there that's only going to work. It's only going to work when Billy, Johnny, Maggie, and Sarah all go down their basement and they've tethered their phones together in this weird thing we've never even thought of, where they're Bluetooth together, and now they have a node resolve, and then they're resolving blockchain, and they know if this keeps happening, we're going to go to that concert where the salad bar guy's coming, But again, it's all about coming back to the local. I think it could be possible. What do you think,
Yeah, and I
Tracy?
want to hear Tracy's input on that too. Please go ahead, Tracy.
No, I think it has to. You're right. Like, SB, excuse me. I almost referred to you by your first name, but you've started reading the book, The Snow Crash. You started reading that, okay? Where
I read it. Yeah, I read it for sure.
he's projecting the future back then, and it was written in the early 90s, I think, where people have to be able to compute and do business in their lives with multiple different currencies, all issued from things that are other than governments.
Absolutely.
And it may seem like a pain in the ass, but it's less of a pain in the ass than having some centralized authority decide arbitrarily that the money in your pocket is just going to lose 50% of its value today. And the people in Venezuela are learning all about that right now. So, right now where we've got a faith-based fiat system where people don't really, the only thing they have faith in is that the dollar is the only thing that has any market value.
Mhm.
And they have faith in that because they see it. It's the reality of their lives. But they also have faith and confidence that it's going to be continuing to lose value. They know that. And they think that that's just like, water flowing down the stream. That's just nature. But if they had been born sometime before 1970, they would know that that's actually not the way. That's not nature. It's called inflation, and it's not just built into the system, or it is now. But I mean, something happened. Something was changed to make that a part of your life now, that everything just loses value. So the thing is that we're just very slow on the uptake, and also we're not, up until recently, we weren't presented with any options. The options have come along, but only a small percentage of the population has taken any time to look into that. And still, we're all just scared. Like, are we all going to, cross the street even though there's no traffic? Are we all going to do this thing that seems risky all at once?
Yeah.
But you don't want to wait until until you're in a Venezuela situation to react to what you know is coming. But again, that's the mind control, which, it's all over the bills themselves that you handle, and it's all over the credit card commercials, and it's all over everything. It's, this is your God, the subliminal message on the dollar is it's everywhere, it's everywhere. And so we're all afraid, even though we know that the money in our hands is losing value, and obviously something has to be done. But we're not reacting. Just like, if you did, we're doing so many analogies tonight, but like, let's say you were jaywalking with the crowd because it seemed like there was no traffic coming and everybody was crossing the street all at once and there's safety in numbers. But then all of a sudden a truck comes along and you're the only person who sees it. Well, it's an extreme example. So maybe you'll run and run to safety and try to alert everyone. And your instincts will win out. But if there's enough people in that crowd, your reaction time is going to get slower. And you're going to look around and wait to see if anyone else is moving out of the way of the truck. That's the way I feel. That's what we're in like right now. And it's been going on for a while. It gets worse every day, where people's reactions are getting slower and slower to obvious danger. And in this case, we're talking about the danger of the, being tethered to the dollar system, because they've not known anything else and they've not had any authority come up and say, it's okay to think about trying something else. And I don't know what it would take. If seeing Venezuela we've seen it before. We saw it in Zimbabwe, we saw it in all these other countries, but we think, oh, that's something that happens in third world countries because we have the dollar and it's so it's stable, but it's not stable.
No,
so I don't know. What would break that spell that people are under?
Well, it's another example of what James's his book is about. Is okay. So I guess this would be the third one, but the almighty dollar, right? Our whole lives we've heard him call it the almighty dollar. Went back to your God analogy too, and it wasn't the CDC, it was the EPA. They're giving you like, we're protecting the environment. And you started the whole thing off, James, with another, I remember, it was the land of the free, right? We've got, they give us all these inverted premises. The almighty dollar is going to save you, Tracy. I don't know why you're even worrying about it. What are you talking about? Well, this is not Venezuela, Tracy. Jeez. We have the American dollar, And to me, it's like, I've been looking at it for so long, I'm astounded they can still keep the fucking racket going. I used to be an insider billing Medicare for durable medical equipment, and I don't want to know what they're doing to make Medicare work anymore, because it wasn't working then, and we were watching what we thought was going to be the process of the medical side of it flying apart, the equipment side, the billing part of it. We thought it was going to fly apart and cause the rest of the system to start to break down, but it didn't, because what James says is true, is that they are using this system. You really do have to bill it, and you really do have to get reimbursed, but it's not real. So if a huge problem happens, they can either kind of ignore it, or they can just delete it, or they can migrate that whole problem onto a different architecture and act like the old architecture was never there, even though everyone pretended like it was the real thing. This is they've got this total song and dance going on, and I love the idea of accountability to the person. Every one of us, like James said, what's the one thing I'm afraid of? It's not that my cell phone screen's going to be cracked, or that I can't pay my credit card. It's that I'm going to end up in Mississippi and have to kiss the fucking starfish, and I don't want to, man. I don't want to. I want to do right so that doesn't happen to me,
Well, I would argue that if you see Venezuela, you are less likely to want to change or disrupt the dollar at all, because Venezuela reminds you of how great it is here, and how perfectly calm everything is, and how the last thing we want to do is rock the boat. It's always subversive, maybe not always, but it's almost always subversive how mind control works, where when you push something, you end up, it's the reaction to it It happened. It happened earlier this week with Q. I was explaining how Q is a wrestling operation, and that's why you've got Hulk Hogan and you've got El Grincho, and you've got two opposing forces, and those opposing forces are on the same team. They're crucial. They're absolutely crucial. If you don't have El Grincho, who throws sand in Hulk Hogan's face, like he threw sand in his face right there on the ring. It was so cheating, and the ref did nothing, like nothing, to stop El Grincho from doing that. And then El Grincho hit Hulk when he wasn't looking, and now Hulk has become Perseus, and you were just like, oh my God, you've got to get him, Hulk. You've got to get him. You've got to avenge him, Hulk. Avenge him. Now imagine the world if none of that happened. If you went into the wrestling match and El Grincho came out and shook Hulk's hand and said, I hope you have a good match. I've admired your work. And Hulk goes, I've admired your work too. Here we go. You're not going to come back to the wrestling match because another black magician is going to catch you when you leave that night, and he's going to give you something even better to watch. He's going to tell you a story of a cheerleader vampire slayer or whatever it takes to hook you in the hypnotic trance, the back and forth of the drama of the scapegoat to the golden child, to the scapegoat, to the golden child. And that's why Venezuela reinforces America. It doesn't make it more likely to happen. The problem is that the three of us know money isn't real, but we are the minority. We are the ones, we are not, my dad is not going to tell you that money isn't real. My brother, who's just a year or two older than me, he is not going to tell you it's real. The difference between me and my brother and my dad is that I am allergic to money. I have no money. I struggle every day. When I used to not, back when I was in mind control, I did really well. I was rewarded from my mind control. I made good money as a programmer. I had a nice car. I had everything that I wanted. And then I had a bad incident with my marriage, and it woke me up. Like I saw a trauma and it hit. And that's what I'm trying to get around to is how is this going to be fixed? Everyone's going to have to go through a trauma. And unless you go through a trauma, you're not going to change. You're not going, no one with money is going to wake up tomorrow and say money isn't real. They're going to wake up tomorrow and say money is real. It is so real because I got it all. I got all the real money.
I think that's where we're headed, because I mean, you can look at the full history of the financial markets and see, hell, in the last 30 or 40 years, it's like almost every eight years on the button is something like, they always call it a recession. They never call it a real crash. They always threaten, rattle the tambourines and scream, oh, this is it, it's a crash again. But I think that's all architecture they're installing in our minds for when they do crash it, because when they're completely ready to make an attempt at migrating us all onto a different system, I think they are going to put us all through the trauma and all of what you described with people who are emotionally invested in what they believe to be their finances and their liquid assets, or their equity. When it happens, it's going to be bedlam. People are going to go nuts because they're going to imagine that their physical body and their mind and their heart are suffering that loss when they're not. When they're probably physically fine, except for that they probably need to breathe and take a drink of water, It always trips me out when people act like that, especially people I know that are poor, who live paycheck to paycheck, and they say, oh man, the stock market's been down all week. Like, well, what do you care? You're not a hedge fund. It doesn't affect you. It doesn't affect the price of gasoline or cereal this week, It's... So, do you guys think that that's going to happen? Tracy, do you think that they're going to actually crash the financial markets and not just do like a profitable recession?
I don't know. I think it's all a matter of what each person defines as okay, and usually okay is when you're okay. So if a whole bunch of people lose their jobs, or a whole bunch of people become homeless, or the price of their house collapses and they have no savings and no retirement anymore, and all that stuff happens, but you're still okay for the plan you had for the general future, then you just think that, it's a bad time, but that not that it's some kind of catastrophic end. But if you're the person that loses everything, then it's catastrophic to you. So every time they go through this, as you said, every 8 years or so, some people are just shed from the system. Their futures are lost. Sometimes they die as a result of what happens to them, and they're forgotten about. I think that happens to a lot of people. And so then, when as you say, the stock market is our illusion of financial health. So people who are suffering and, nearly dead from the effects of poverty will still look at a headline about the stock market and say, oh, great. Well, that gives me hope for the future. But really, it's so hard to bring yourself out of a situation like that if you've lost everything in one of those recessions as we're describing. So, those people generally they have lost, and there has been a catastrophic loss, and there's generally a very significant loss of the general standard of living whenever this happens too, which is why our standard of living now is so much worse, really, comparable in so many indexes with with the way it was in the 50s and 60s, for instance. But again, it's like, well, if it didn't happen to you, or it happened gradually enough to you, you can look and see what you've lost. But if as long as you're still okay, then you're going to say that the big crash never happened. But the big crash did happen. If you look at, again, 50s and 60s versus now, you would say the big crash happened in the 70s. And then there's been a bunch of more little big crashes, that have dramatically changed the face of the country we're living in. And again, slow reaction, because people are mind controlled into thinking that everything's okay, because on some level, in some ways, things are still going on. But again, people are used to saying they're okay when someone walks up to them and says, hey, how you doing? And they say, I'm okay. And maybe, something devastating just happened to them, but they're almost always going to say, I'm okay, unless they're having a heart attack at that moment and they need someone to call an ambulance right at that moment. Yeah. They're going to say they're okay. Yeah. It doesn't really mean they're okay.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's true.
End of speech. Sorry.
Well, the amount of silver that was in a quarter, right? You guys probably heard this, but it was like in 1975, the amount of silver that was in a quarter would buy you a gallon of gas. And if you still had that same quarter, you could sell that silver right now and buy a gallon of gas.
Yep.
So silver has maintained its value, but what's happening is that the dollar is being vampired. Inflation, we're constantly told there is no inflation, but inflation is happening in these bubbles that are bursting. But more importantly, it's happening in the quality of product too. So the product or the quality is completely degrading in front of our eyes.
Quantity too, James. Quantity too.
Matching when I have money, the house I'm in, which I used to think I owned, because I thought I owned it, I bought a nice little stove and a microwave. It's been like 5 years, and I don't know what the temperature is on the thing because the freaking LCD panel's burnt out, and the microwave doesn't even work. It doesn't even. It's not like, it doesn't even work. And they offered me my inflation back by saying, if you give me $100 extra, then when this fucks up, you can now deal with our bureaucracy to try and get another one. In other words, they took the quality right out of the product and put it in their pocket and then still sold it to you. It's no different than IKEA saying, I'm going to give you a car for $700. And you're like, okay, that sounds great. And then you go get it. And they're like, so here's the map to the mountain where you could mine the ore to come back to a refinery and create an axle. And then, here's the tire and stuff like that. So it's like, this is happening every day, but we're still insisting that, Paul Krugman knows what's going on. And so he's telling us there is no inflation. So we naturally agree. But let's stop this for a sec. Let's come back to mind control and let's think about this. Let's play with the idea that there's no countries and that we are a human labor farm. There's no incentive to bust the system. There is incentive to leak inflation out of the system, to train us to do with less, to train us to want to give more in taxes. Like, there is that's in place, but it would hurt the cabal. It would hurt the rancher if he was to shut down the entire operation. All the cows need to be making milk, and it's not going to be good for him if there were no more cow buckets or milk buckets, like whatever. He's going to want to keep that going. So maybe, I'm just saying maybe what they're calling a financial collapse isn't a collapse at all. It's never going to happen. But it's an excuse to vampire more resources out. They're sucking more resources out by claiming, oh my God, there's going to be a collapse. Oh, this is happening. And so we see, oh, gee, a fire is burning our savings. There's nothing we can do because we have a fire department and they're telling us, well, we tried to put out the fire. What we did is we stuffed our pockets with money and we left and we went to McDonald's and we came back and
We got the money wet first. That helped.
It's every single thing is an operation. Every single thing is an op. And if you believe like I do, if you know like I do, that 9/11 was a satanic pillage, it was the old-fashioned, hey Vlad, what are you doing this weekend? No, not much, maybe some impaling. Stop, drop everything, come to Paris. We're gonna freaking kill everybody. We're gonna drink wet, warm blood tonight, my friend. Let's go. That's what 9/11 was. It was an invitation to a pillage on a date. And that's why you see all these greedy bastards that were like, and here's Silverstein, $4 billion, insurance policy. Everyone's making profit there. Everything's going down because they knew this is pillage time. It's time to pillage. That's why all these different conspiracies are wrapped around 9/11, because they all happened at the same time. It was a massive grab. That's why there was, 2.7 trillion missing in the Pentagon when the Jason assault missile hit that building. All these things were timed and coordinated around the pillage. So if you believe that, which I do, I know that happened actually. I'm sorry, I don't believe it. I know
we
that's
all
what happened.
know it. We all know it. Here, I mean, I'd say
So-
even in our chat for the most part, we all know it. We've all studied it independently. We've all looked at the works of people like William Ramsey that show the occult side. So we know it.
So take responsibility for that. What I mean by that is let's own that that's the truth. Okay? Let's own that happened and that people do that. No one has gone to jail. No one has come up to another person and said, I am avenging my father, and shoot someone in the head. Like, there's no one has paid any price at all for that. So why do we think that these vampires were like, that was fun? I feel satiated. I never need to do this again. I'm going to go home now and watch golf reruns. We need to remember that there's a killer on the road. We need to stop pretending that was a one-time event. And when you do that, like I feel like I do that more, and that is what I'm kind of pushing the book for, is I want you to look at every single thing that happens, every single story that you're told from the national level. Don't just look at it as a lie. Look at it as a grab. Look at it as a vampiric event. And you will start to notice what I've noticed is that you can figure out a gnosis around why are they doing this? Who's going to benefit from this? And you can use that as a cipher. Parkland shooting is a perfect example. What figure rose to prominence as a result of Parkland? His name's David Hogg. That boy was he was a Manchurian victim, right? He was placed and then elevated, and now he's going to Harvard, and he will be a future Manchurian candidate because he was fed with dopamine for saying that he was at the school when we have it on video that he was at home. His entire life now is a lie, but we've created that lie. We've rewarded him for that lie. That's just the one we've seen. You have to understand that this happens every day, every moment. All of us are being paid to turn into a shill like David Hogg. We're shilled to Monday and Tuesday of every single week. We are shills. And we're getting used to it. I know we're getting used to it because it used to only be every Monday. And a long time ago, imagine trying to go to Tennessee, to the backwoods of Tennessee, because I grew up in Tennessee. Like, imagine trying to go there like 50, even 80 years ago. But imagine trying to go there in 12, I think, the year before the federal income tax, and saying, hey, I've got an idea. Your labor belongs to the government now. What do you think about that? Look, like the first time you brought that idea up, it was like really hard. Like, it was like really hard, to convince Cletus that, yeah, man, that sounds like a fair deal. That takes time. These people aren't going away. They're getting smarter. They're getting richer, and they're getting more clever, which is why I'm only thought of this now, just listening to us talk about it. But maybe these financial crises they're not crises at all, because there's no benefit in the system falling. They could prop up the system more. So why does it look like it's collapsing?
That's my concern. Yeah, exactly. That's my concern, is that maybe in 1929 we did see an actual, maybe they slipped. Maybe that was your chance to knock out Mike Tyson, that they slipped right there. And they're like, whoa, we wanted it to move, but not like that. And they didn't really recover until they set off World War II, in my opinion. They try and bring in the New Deal Roosevelt crap and say that patched it. But if you dig under the surface, that didn't really, they were still just stringing themselves along. It was ramping up the idea that we had a common enemy, we had to go fight. And then it on paper at least, and we weren't there, it looks like that changed the situation so it had a solid foundation again. And we haven't really seen anything like that since. We've seen things like the savings and loan, like 2007, 2008. So I'm very curious to see, because we're watching all of the big boys buy into the crypto too. And like you said, all the security that you can offer us, whether it be financially or otherwise, is all psychological until you get to about 8 feet of concrete with rebar and you're sitting in there with air conditioning. It's all psychological. There's no such thing as security. We're not safe. And so I want to see what they do and how that aligns with our chances to continue in the path, something similar to the path that you're talking about. Because we all have similar dreams. Everyone I talk to says, all I want is 2 or 3 acres and a water supply, and just leave me the hell alone.
Yeah.
And they all say that with love in their heart. They're not being curmudgeonly and angry. They're not wanting to mount up in arms and hunker down. They I'll get along with my neighbor. Even if he's a trans Arab lesbian, I don't care. Just give us a boundary we can negotiate over, and whatever, And I mean, so I'm curious to see what happens. I look forward. I actually look forward to it, because I'm not. I've thought so long about what I said earlier, that fear of the unknown. If that's the real enemy, then you have to start the process now to condition yourself to seek the unknown, and not for an adventure or for a dopamine rush or for an adrenaline rush, but because you remaining comfortable, all of us remaining comfortable in whatever we have, is what's hurting us the most, because they've designed the architecture of comfort for us, and they keep turning up the volume. They've got us all looking at our phones on 11, and being afraid of the weather and the news on 11, and everything's ramped up. We need to step into wherever the liminal gap is, the space between all these things, and find out what the hell we do. Not imagine what you're going to do. What do you really do? What do you really do if you don't have any money? I know I've been dead broke and walking the streets essentially homeless before. It was a relief. But if you'd never done it, you'd never know that it's a relief, right?
Yeah.
As SB, remember the stock market crash is what ultimately led to the refinancing of the whole system, basically liquidating the gold and making a deal with foreign investors to. It was a refi. They were. It seemed like to me, actually selling the future tax dollars of American citizens to these foreign bankers. So I think that was the beginning of a new stage in the system, and it's very, very real, because imagine how you would have felt if someone came to your door and said, "We need to take all of your gold and give you this paper instead," when that had never happened before. And the way that people must have reacted to that, who had some inkling of what was actually going on. I would imagine everyone knew what was going on, because that's pretty in your face to come take your money. So, I think that was way more real than anything that anyone's experienced since then.
Yeah, I think you're. I kind of forgot about that part of it, Tracy. I was. I like the idea that they slipped, and I think you're probably right that they didn't slip. They saw that they were somewhere in the realm of that, and so they made a really cunning deal. And they did. They sold us all down the river, quite literally. Your birth certificate, folks, if you don't know, represents a bond for all of your. You are represented by a straw man, an avatar of yourself on paper, and it didn't used to be that way. Even in our lifetime, it didn't really used to be that way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot of times I think that the contracts are actually the life of the poor, that the elite don't have a birth certificate. The elite don't have a record on themselves. They're free, liberated men or women. They're not suffering the satanic system that defines who we are first, and then after that, then you have a chance to do something else. I want to jump back to crypto a sec, because if we come back to this idea of this gnosis of, look, everyone is a vampire, like the elite or the vampires here, you just have to keep looking at that cipher. Another reason why I'm not so sure that the system was going to collapse is, if I remember correctly, the entire cryptocurrency market is 1/8 of Warren Buffett's net worth. In other words, Warren Buffett could buy every single cryptocurrency out there. He could buy it if he was to spend 1/8 of his entire wealth.
Right.
Okay. So it shows you just how tiny of a market crypto is. Okay. Now picture yourself an elite, and you knew that the system was going to fall. Why is crypto not $7 trillion for one Bitcoin? In other words, why are the elite not jumping onto that and taking it over right away? And I think the answer might be the exact same reason why, when Al Gore was telling us all how dirty we were and how we only have 10 years to live, that none of the rich people sold their property along the coast. Like Al told them all, Florida's going to be underwater, in 2005, but no one in the know sold. They just stayed there. That was a gnosis to you. In other words, you can hear the lie. He was given 2 Oscars for that movie. But you just watch, all you have to do is watch the lions. The lions aren't moving. There's not danger. That's not real. And the same thing might be happening with this economic crisis. We don't see the elite moving, do we? we see the same people investing in mortgages. If the economy was going to collapse, mortgages would be, correct me if I'm wrong, Tracy, but I think mortgages would be the massive bonfire. Like if you were invested, in owning mortgages and the economy collapsed, you would be the one who was screwed the most, probably. I mean, yes, you might own that land, but everything would be so colossally devalued just in seconds that it would, if you were the elite and you knew what was happening, you wouldn't be involved in mortgages at all. You'd be doing something else.
Well, except that everything is tied up in mortgages now. I mean, it's part of the backing of the whole currency, even. I mean, and all the derivatives based on it. So, I think it'd be hard to find someone whose life wouldn't be affected by it, I think. But yeah, what we're told about what the elite are doing, it comes, every now and then there's a news article and it's always the same thing. There's a trend that the elite are, moving into offshore accounts and moving to private islands, and they always have offshore accounts in private islands, don't they? So yeah. That doesn't mean they're living there all the time, or that they're hiding there in a bunker. So yeah, I don't know. I think that in general you're right. Like there's no rush to shelter. No one's acting like there's a big catastrophe about to happen.
I think I've heard some rumors about like maybe they're going into natural resources, like they're buying up natural resources, but you don't see a tick in gold. You don't see a tick in, you don't see those huge jumps. And silver and gold have a legitimate purpose. Well, like from a technology standpoint, these are usable commodities that do things, and it's all just flat.
Yeah,
everything's fine.
When things do happen, you do see at least a minor tick in things like that too. Right before 2007, you did see people not full blown rush into gold and silver, but 2005 you could find people talking about it on the internet. By early 2007, it was starting to hit the stupid regular mainstream media and stuff. So, and we're not seeing that right now. I think that back to one of your comments way earlier, James, the idea of hidden land, uncertainty of the nature of this realm as a whole. It made me think of the bird flight maps and how likely it is that there's land in those places that we don't know anything about. And I think these people who are outside the game more so than the elites that we're familiar with, I think they have an influence that has nothing to do with money, with any kind of money, gold or otherwise, or resources, even the way we think of resources,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All they want is the raw resources that we produce. They don't care what. They have no need at all for the money at all. Like not at all. It means nothing to them. That's why I get frustrated. You've probably seen me as me get frustrated with people on Twitter sometimes. But I get frustrated sometimes when people keep thinking it's about money. And I'm just like, guys, you're trading gum wrappers in the quad. The warden doesn't need your gum wrapper. That he's letting you have gum wrappers so you guys will shut up and you'll negotiate your own way of talking, And he doesn't need that. He doesn't roll around in a pile of gum wrappers. He doesn't feel that, oh, I'm so rich. No, that's not how it freaking works. Let me show you this. I love this. I hope people understand what I'm trying to say. This is wealth. It's silver. But what makes it special? What's really cool about this piece of silver, first of all, it's heavy. Like it feels really good to hold. Like it's got a weight to it.
Yeah.
But more importantly about it is it's got a beautiful Indian head on it on one side and a beautiful buffalo on the other. But if I scratched off this buffalo, not that I would because it's beautiful, it would still be silver. But
right.
Like it would still have the the facade. Right? The facade of this coin means nothing. This is valuable because of its essence. The essential nature of what this is what is valuable. not the image it portrays. There's not a language that makes it valuable. It doesn't even say, $1. All it says is, like a smart ass, it says 0.999 fine silver, because you can't say one. That's real. And I can melt this. I can burn this. And come back tomorrow. And it will be in a different shape, but it will still be silver. I can write on it, whoever holds this coin is a dickhead, and it will still be worth the same amount of money. I want people around the world to understand that that's how fluid we are. That I can pull out a dollar bill and scratch off the surface, and it's not $1 anymore. Like, it's gone. It's all that value is a facade. It's a whitewashed paint job on a dead tree with maybe a hologram in it. Like, maybe that. It's not real. It's a facade. And that facade is important because that's where the black magic is. All magic is a facade. Every single bit of magic is a facade. And only in our lifetimes, maybe a little bit earlier, but in most of our lifetimes, have we let them say, now it's a Federal Reserve note. It's not even attached to silver. Like, it's not even hinting that this is money anymore. And that's how mind controlled we are. And until my friend, I've got a prepper friend, and he's done really well with his life. He knew how to get out. He's real big into silver and gold. And I was so broke last year. I didn't have money to buy this, but he insisted I need to buy some silver. And I only got maybe 10 coins. But I love this thing. Like, I love this thing. It is the coolest thing in the world. And if we were in the same room, I would let you hold it so you'd understand. It's cool. It's got like a magical essence to it because it's real.
Yeah.
It's not one.
I used to have a bunch of them. I actually saved a bunch of gold and silver and bought my house with it and then lost my house. And I don't regret it. But I know exactly what you're talking about, folks. If you've never held an ounce of gold or ounce of silver in your hand, there used to be a famous silver bug. His name was David something, but he was big time in the silver market. And he used to stand downtown Spokane, Washington, in the most central park of the whole downtown area and just ask people to hold a silver coin and see the reaction and the look on their face. And it's true that it's magic. It's real magic. Silver and gold and copper and gemstones and crystals are all there's an essence, there's a nature there.
Yeah.
It's not paper. It's not a trick. It's not shapes and squiggles. Yeah. So it's
not to interrupt, but if you close your eyes, you still feel there's something to this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's
what's
go ahead, Tracy.
You talked about melting it down, and you could do that, and that's your choice. What's interesting is that it's illegal to destroy a dollar bill or a penny. Now people do it still. You can press a penny and at an amusement park and get a souvenir, and that's okay. But generally, if you just went and burned a bunch of dollar bills, then that would be illegal. It's because it's blasphemy. Blasphemy is not believing in God, and you need the faith.
Yeah,
man, that's a good point because it should be your right to burn money. That's brilliant. I think you just uncovered a bit of mind control. Absolutely, I hadn't even considered.
James, I did it one time. One time I was sitting looking at two girls. I was sitting in a bar by myself looking at two girls across the campfire from me outside at a local bar here in Walla Walla called the Green Lantern. And I was checking them out, like, okay, are these girls cool? And I wasn't ready to strike up a conversation. So I took a $5 bill out of my wallet and I walked over to the two of them and I said, hey, I want one of you two girls to take this $5 bill from me and throw it in the fire. And they said, no, we don't want to. Why don't you let us buy ourselves a drink, or why don't you spend it on us? And I said, no, you need to take the money and just set it in the fire. I want to see which one of you. And I was actively trying to hand it to him, like, take my money and burn it up in the fire. And they couldn't do it for the life of them. So finally I turned around and I set the $5 bill on top of all the burning logs. And and it started to burn up pretty good, and a gentleman sitting there watching the whole thing go down reached in there and tried to grab it out, and he got it out of there, but it burnt up completely into ash and floated away. And I turned to him and I said, now that was worth $5, because that's the way I think. I don't like the idea of it's a $5 bill. I'd do it with $1,000, no problem, if it wasn't going to make people suffer, because it doesn't mean anything.
God, that's such a powerful ritual. Like,
I wanted to see if they were cool. They weren't cool. They weren't cool girls. I didn't want to hang out with them.
no. But if that was to keep happening, that would break. What Tracy uncovered would be broken by that ritual, because you would be showing everyone. In fact, that would be the way for someone to tell the world, I now understand that money is make-believe.
They'll start arresting us if we burn up too much money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they burned it by pushing delete.
It's powerful mind control, though. Like you said, that guy stuck his hand in the fire. I mean,
He did. I was hoping he didn't hurt himself, but that's just the kind of guy I am. I'm a little bit more mellow now that I've gotten a little older, but I'm an outlandish son of a bitch.
SB, have you ever seen The Magic Christian with Ringo Starr in it?
No, I've been told about this movie over and over again, and I've never went and watched it. Thank you for reminding me. No, I need it. Especially Ringo Starr, in a way, is my favorite Beatle. Like, at first it was John, and then I became disenchanted, and I kind of still cling pretty bad to George. I have like a kindred feeling towards George Harrison, but in a way I secretly love Ringo the most, So I need to watch The Magic Christian. Thank you for reminding me.
Well, yeah, but it's all people doing things just like this, and the final scene, of course, involves the desecration of money and just inviting people to soil themselves in order to get a little bit of free money. And so.
Awesome. Oh, that gives me an idea. We are right at 10 o'clock here, so if anybody's getting, I feel we don't have to cut the feed like we're pretending like we've been sponsored and there's another show coming on. But if we want to graduate towards something more lighthearted and or start to wrap it up, that's fine with me. But I wanted to bring this idea up to have private watch parties, plus ultra watch parties, especially if your plan that I know you're embarking on is continuing in a linear fashion, like I hope and pray that it does. I love the idea of us all being able to do, look at there.
Yeah, we should definitely have some viewer parties, I think. Here's what I wanted to... I was hoping one of these days we could have a be-in with everybody.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'll explain more about what I thought that might entail in the future, but we need to have a be-in sometime soon.
I was thinking of
where everybody gets together.
Mystery Science Theater 2000, only instead of with 3 people trolling the movie, that it's as many as we can fit. that's
Hey, I wanted to ask the guests something, James. It says your book is occult fiction on Amazon. Can you explain that?
Yeah, that's me just picking a category, trying to guess what's gonna bring people in. So
it's not fiction.
So one of the chapters is about Gloria Vanderbilt. Gloria Vanderbilt, her son Carter Vanderbilt died, and I'm under the impression that he was ceremonially, ritually murdered. And I traced down what I think actually happened based on all the facts that I found in the paper. For example, the day that Carter jumped off the 14th story of the Vanderbilt home in Central Park, he was upset about a girlfriend. He had come home to visit. He was sleeping in Anderson's room, and Gloria opened up her mail to the New Yorker and saw a story inside called The White Angel. And she went, all this happened, all this is documented. She read that story to Carter, and the story is about brothers. Okay, think about it. Your son's at home, he's depressed about his girlfriend, and you decide to read him this story. 2 brothers have voyeur sex with a girl, And then one of them does LSD and runs through a plate glass window and bleeds to death and dies. That's the story you're going to tell your son when he's upset about his girlfriend. So she goes upstairs and she goes into Anderson's room, and Carter's there on the bed. She goes, I want to read you a story. She reads him White Angel. Gloria is a dark mother. She is a mind control alter. She has parts in her. She has different parts of her personality. And when she saw the White Angel story, she was triggered to read that to Carter. And when Carter heard the story, he was triggered to jump off the balcony. That is one of the stories in my book. Do I know that all that was mind control? No, I can't prove that. But all the facts are there. And if you follow the work of Fritz Springmeier, who talks about alters and this concept of the dark mother, which is kind of twisted, the idea is that there was possibly 13 mind control. God, this sounds so nuts. But I'm just well read. But there's these 13 dark mothers, and what makes them a dark mother is they sacrifice one of their children. And by sacrificing one of their children, they become trauma programmed again. So, they have the right bloodline that holds the code that is programmable through generations. And so that generation, because it was done to someone before Gloria in her line, she is prone to do it. And because of that, she trained her son Carter to be accessible to that. So I can't call that nonfiction. And I don't want to, because I don't want the media to see my book as dangerous. I want my book to come across from the elite as this is pulp nonfiction. So I would call it pulp nonfiction, if that makes sense. And I am literally trying to skirt the censorship by writing it specifically in this way, by presenting it specifically in this way. It is my job to get past that. And that's why each of my arguments in the book, I think you'll find, maybe not all of them, but I think you'll find they're almost always emotional arguments. In other words, I'm presenting you facts, but I'm showing you the emotional calculations that lead you to understand, well, what else could it be? Like, what else could cause this to happen? And Gloria Vanderbilt's just one of those stories. Another one is Rockefeller, and I suggest that Rockefeller built the Twin Towers to be a satanic tuning fork because they're made out of aluminum and they're hollow. They resonate sound like a tuning fork, and this fucker thinks he's Satan. Dave Rockefeller thought he was probably Lucifer, the son of light. He probably looked at himself in a good way. But the way he was rebelling against God was by placing a tuning fork in the island of Manhattan, which served as like a ritual circle. And if you look at Masonic ritual, there's always a checkerboard. And the street grids of New York, Manhattan were that checkerboard. And Manhattan Island became his master's carpet. And he was at his office watching the Twin Towers fall. He was in his penthouse watching the whole thing. And I would imagine he probably had a raging heart on as it all went down. Like, I really think he just sexually was turned on by the entire thing, because the whole time he's watching it, he's like, I did this. I did this whole thing. And for 30 years, or I can't remember the exact how long it took to build that thing, but for that entire time, he was just constantly just getting up, walking through, looking at the plans, just thinking about it. Just thinking about it like some sicko. And that all that psychic energy builds up and it erupts, and it transmutes into the ground. The trauma is an echo. It's an energy, a frequency, and a vibration. And terror, that's why terror works. Terror is a low enough vibration where it's easy for us to entrain to it and resonate to it. And so I'm answering this in a long way, I'm sorry, but it's like there's some weird shit in this book that I've written about. But man, I researched the crap out of this stuff, and all the dates match up, all the rituals, the timing matches up. I just wasn't there. And I think that I've given a better explanation for why 9/11 happened, because I don't think it was about money. I think this was about power. I think Satan is a label. It's not a person. And David Rockefeller saw an opportunity to crown himself as the Prince of Evil by doing something that was like a rock star would try and give the perfect guitar solo. Like Prince would come out and say, I'm going to freaking rock people's world. They're going to remember what my guitar sounds like while it gently weeps. Just like Michael Jackson on Smooth Criminal. When he comes out and he does this thing where all of a sudden he just leans and he's like leaning over while he's standing on the ground. Like these ceremonies, they're prana exercises where we're ingesting this energy. And that's what this book talks about. It explains that the elite, they don't want your money, they want your prana. They want your worship, and they'll take it whether you hate them or whether you love them. They still feed either way. They just need you to think about them. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes me think of the Emoto experiments or the Rice experiments. The emotional, either positive or negative energy put onto. Have you seen this? You guys all know what I'm talking about, right? They put rice in a clear glass jar with a lid on it, and you either curse it or bless it or ignore it. And the rice that's been ignored is the one that molders and turns bad the fastest. Like, supposedly the rice, I've never done the experiment. I keep telling myself I'm going to do it, but I haven't done it yet. But supposedly the rice that's blessed often becomes fermented and doesn't mold, so it doesn't start to putrefy and turn bad. Yeah. So I agree that it's always something like prana, lush, the idea that there's entities beyond our understanding that are harvesting, that are using human agency to assist in the process of harvesting from us. I think is it sure seems right to me. Yeah. It seems like they're not. The vibration of it keeps coming to us through books, through stories, through mythology, now through movies and through the internet. We're seeing this. The archetype is like the stone that's thrown in the water, and the ripples just keep coming. That's.
Yeah, it comes through our genes too.
Yeah. DNA's huge. Yeah.
And we can be possessed epigenetically, and that's another thing I touch on in the book. I think that's why we're having such a problem, is because they understand how to give us trauma that will be inherited, and that we will pass it down. I am a function of my mom's trauma. I am a function of my dad's trauma. And if I had kids, they would be a function of that. My dog will witness my trauma, and he will react a certain way. And so we are all tuning forks. And the people that we love, the people that we look up to, what we're really doing is we're looking at them for a vibration. And that vibration, we like that vibration. It works for us because we see it working for them. And when you share that vibration, that's where things like telepathy start to show up. And that's why you and me, SB, will have a lot of similar thinking at the similar time when we're on Twitter, because you and I have, either we entrained to each other when we met each other, or we just naturally, have the 7.43 gigahertz, happening in our brainwave. But because we both have the same vibration, you and I cannot be in contact, but we will both think about the green frog at the same time. And it's because there's a vibration coming. You and me will see a comet fall across the sky. And because we have a 7.43 hertz in our mind, we're going to think about the green keck frog of Egypt at the same time, even though none of us really actually came up with the idea. It's a natural fractal. It's a fractal result of being in the world and of seeing the comet and of everything else that happens to it. It would fractally create the green frog in you. And because I see it too, I would see it also. And we don't understand how that works. Like we've been hidden how telepathy works. And so none of us are willing to really look at thoughts and what they mean. I could keep talking. I need to shut up because it.
No, yeah, we're gonna have to start. We're getting close to 10:30 here. I wanted to what you just said about us being of a similar vibration a lot of the time. I noticed it right away when I started reading your tweets. I was like, oh, this guy's stuff is different. But then I started paying really close attention when you dropped some info about this book, People of the Lie, and I'm trying to remember the author's name.
Heck.
Yeah,
M. Scott.
M. Scott Peck, folks. If you've never, it's a really short book. You can find it on audio for free. I think I actually purchased it when you told me about it, and then I found it free later. But I mean, it was only $3 or $4. It was cheap. It's not very long, but it really gives an honest evaluation and a theoretical reason behind why people behave from the evil of their heart instead of from the good of their heart. And I highly recommend it. It changed my life, man. I appreciate you pointing it out. And I moved on from there to his other book, and I've probably listened to that one 3 or 4 times just because it resonates with me. So that, to me, that's just an example of, if the comet and the Keck frog are the exoteric, surface level evidence of similar vibration, then the idea that you can point something out in passing just as a courtesy like anyone would, and it makes me like, I'm going to go buy all this guy's stuff and not just listen to it or read it, but I'm going to do it like a ritual. Like, I won't stop listening to The Road Less Traveled because it speaks to me. It reminds me where I am. It reminds me why some of my behaviors are abhorrent and need to go, and why some of them are actually not just okay, but I can tell myself, yeah, fuck yeah, good job, you're doing that. Even if the world doesn't agree and people are taboo on it, so what? It's a blessing to have that characteristic, and there's no reason to feel dirty or ashamed, so I appreciate that, And I want to encourage everyone, since we are starting to wrap it up, the information to find James is in the description of this episode. You're on 44. Here's the cover of the real hard copy book. You can see blueprints of mind control. James True. I love that art, that graphic. Clockwork Orange is one of my favorite movies, even though it is such a drastic thing. That it's got the. We're all doing that to ourselves, and they're perfectly happy to keep supplying us the tools to pry our eyes open and stare at only what they want us to see. But we have the opportunity to repent of it, to turn our backs on it if we choose, and to maybe start a campground coalition or any other fantasy that might come to your mind. Please buy James' books. He's an excellent writer. Follow him on Twitter if you're on there. He's on Facebook also. I don't know if you've shoved yourself onto any of these other fangled platforms. I know people are starting to get onto MeWe, Minds, Gab. I think you're on Gab. I'm not really on there much, but I do have an account. So, I don't know what else to say, folks. I think this was a terrific episode, James. We really appreciate talking to you. I'm excited at the prospect of continuing to get people on the show that have never met and see what happens, because I think your and Tracy's dialogue was beyond what I could have anticipated, imagined, or expected, and it made me very happy. So.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Tracy your stuff here. I hope we can talk more because especially about mind control, I think I could learn a lot and we could have a good discussion about it. So
Absolutely, I enjoyed meeting you. Thank you very much. It was good talk.
All right, cool. Well, at the end of the show, James, what we do is we always look into the camera and we say, as I'm getting ready to push the button, we always say, okay, bye. That's like the closing of the RX Only Picture Show. Thanks for coming, folks. Please tune in next week. I don't think we're going to have a guest. I think it's just going to be the 3 of us hanging out. But, okay, bye.
okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye. And,
Okay, bye.